I waking up with my brain feeling like someone was microwaving it from the inside. Memory fragments hitting me like tiny little bullets. Northern Village. 1960. Great famine. And I'm a deadbeat named Chinfong. Seriously? Couldn't I transmigrate into some rich young master? No, I get the village loser with 0 parents, 0 wife, and 0 food. Jackpot. Before I can even process this, I hear a woman crying underneath me. Please, be gentle. I look down. Oh, well okay then. There's this girl on the brick bed, Li Xuemei, 20 years old, prettiest face in the whole village. Turns out the original me promised her half a gene of meat to get her here. Her sister-in-law and 4-year-old niece are literally starving to death, so she agreed. The kicker? There is no meat. This dude had 0 meat. He straight up scammed her with imaginary pork. Honestly, disgusting behavior, but also kinda impressive game for a village bum. Gotta respect the hustle. So anyway, the wind outside is going absolutely psycho. Minus 30 degrees, window paper blows clean off, freezing air floods in. And the wind keeps blowing for about an hour. After everything calms down, she's crying into the blanket, and I'm lying there staring at the ceiling having my post-clarity existential crisis. You know the vibe. Except instead of thinking about my life choices, I'm thinking about how I'm in 1960 China during a famine and I own literally nothing. Then both our stomachs growl at the same time. Romantic. Where's my meat? She asks. I start searching the house. Stove. Empty. Jar in the corner? Empty. Rice container? Cleaner than my face. Which is saying something because I haven't eaten in days. I find one thing. 1. A single corn bun hiding in a corner. Slightly warm, slightly stinky. She's watching me with these big, hopeful eyes, and I just rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah, there's no meat. Never was. Her brain short-circuits. She looks down at the bed, looks back at me, and starts ugly crying. You promised. Half a gene of meat. I gave you my body for it. My sister-in-law is dying. My niece is 4 and can't even walk from hunger. Why did you lie? Fair questions, all of them. I got nothing. She's starving. Her family's starving. But guess what? I'm also starving. I'm holding a 2-ounce corn bun, and there are 4 people about to die. This thing wouldn't even work as a breath mint, let alone feed 4 mouths. So I made a decision. A terrible, honest, survival mode decision. I'm keeping the bun. Because dead men can't help anybody. You gotta be alive to keep being alive. Yeah, I know. I'm going to hell. I ate the corn bun right in front of her face. Every single bite. Yeah, I know. Stone cold. But my stomach was eating itself, and dead guys don't share food. Li Xuemei just froze there on her knees like someone hit the pause button on her brain. Then the screaming started. She launched at me like a starving cat. All 10 fingernails aimed straight at my face. I'll kill you, you animal. Very scary words. 0 scary strength. I grabbed both her wrists, and honestly it felt like catching 2 chopsticks midair. She was swinging and kicking and cursing, dangling from my grip like a wet shirt on a clothesline. Going absolutely nowhere. Her energy ran out fast. Cursing burns calories too, apparently. She deflated like a sad balloon and just sat on the cold floor crying. Couldn't even insult me anymore. Budget ran dry. Then someone knocked on the door. Xuemei, are you in there? Open up, her sister-in-law. Outside. Right now? And behind her, a tiny mosquito voice. Auntie, the 4-year-old niece. Li Xuemei's face went through every color in the rainbow. White, red, then straight to gray, like a broken traffic light. She looked at the door, looked at the bed, looked at herself. Full panic mode activated. She threw herself at the blanket trying to cover up the evidence on the bed, but her hands were shaking so bad she couldn't even grab the fabric right. Then she spun around and begged me with pure terror in her eyes. Don't open that door. Please. I'll do anything. Just let me get dressed first. Don't let her see me like this. This wasn't scared of getting hit, fear. This was my sister-in-law is about to find out what I just did for a corn bun that doesn't even exist anymore, fear. Grade A, industrial strength shame. The knocking kept going. The sister-in-law was losing it outside. The little girl's voice got weaker with every "Annie, me?" I walked straight for the door. I'm many things, but I'm not hiding in my own house like a turtle in its shell. Chinfong, stop. She tried to chase me, but her legs gave out and she crashed into the side of the bed, half collapsed. One arm reaching out toward me like a movie scene nobody asked for. I didn't stop. grabbed the wooden latch, lifted it. The wind pushed the door open with a long, dramatic creak. The door swung open and -30-degree wind slapped me in the face like an angry ex-girlfriend. Standing there was Lu Lan, Li Xuemei's sister-in-law. Early 20s, but looking about 45 right now. Face the color of old newspaper. And in her arms, little Xiao Ling, for years old, head drooping like a plant that nobody watered for a month. I took one look at this situation, and my brain immediately filed a complaint. Are you kidding me? Nothing but women, children, and problems. Not a single useful person in the bunch. Not one guy who can hunt, chop wood, or do literally anything helpful. Just me and my collection of starving dependents I never signed up for. Lu Lan peeked past me into the house, stretching her neck like a goose. Xuemei? Xuemei, are you in there? No answer from inside. Xuemei was too busy having a mental breakdown behind me. Lu Lan shoved forward. Move it, Chinfong. Xuemei said she was coming here to get meat. Said you owed her. It's been over an hour. What did you do to her? No meat, I said. Same energy as telling someone it's cloudy today. What? I said there's no meat. Not even a little. Her face froze for half a second. Then she got suspicious. Where's Xuemei? Is she inside? Let me in. She squeezed closer, and Xiao Ling made a sound in her arms like a kitten being gently stepped on. Behind me, Xuemei's voice finally crawled out of the room, shaking and cracking. Sis, don't come in. Now, Lu Lan might have been starving and exhausted, but she wasn't stupid. She'd lived in this village her whole life. She'd heard every kind of crying. Angry crying. Sad crying. Fight with your neighbor crying. But Xuemei's voice right now? That was a very specific flavor of crying. That was, someone ripped my dignity off and used it as a doormat, crying. The kind of shame that hits different. Lu Lan's eyes slowly moved from my face to the little slice of bed she could see through the door crack. Her pupils got bigger and bigger, like two tiny moons during an eclipse. Chinfong. Her voice came out squeezed, like she was pushing words through a keyhole. What did you do to Xuemei? Now, a normal person would have danced around this. Made excuses. Told a gentle version. Not me. I'm 6 feet tall of pure honesty and 0 social skills. Your sister-in-law? I slept with her. Done deal. Clean. Efficient. Like splitting firewood with one swing. No extra words needed. The silence that followed could have killed a horse. Inside, Xuemei screamed at me to shut up. Way too late for that. The words were already out there, flying around the room like bats that escaped a cave. You can't unrelease bats. Lu Lan's eyelids started twitching like broken window shutters. Her body tilted sideways. Her knees buckled. She was going down, fainting in the doorway like a character in a soap opera, except this was real, and she was about to crack her skull on my door frame. I grabbed her arm just in time, caught her before her head became friends with the wooden threshold. Professional reflexes from yours truly. But Xiao Ling flew out of her arms during the fall, her tiny body rolling across the ground like a rag doll. Kid weighed nothing. Literally nothing. Like catching air. Lu Lan was completely out. Eyes closed, lips trembling, face whiter than fresh snow. She'd been running on fumes and willpower, and my little announcement popped her last balloon of consciousness. Game over. Xiao Ling lay on the ground face down. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just lay there and whispered one word so quiet I almost missed it. Mama. Xuemei came tumbling off the bed with her clothes still half messed up, shoved me aside, and dropped next to Lu Lan. Sis. Sis. Wake up. She was slapping Lu Lan's face gently, but Lu Lan's neck was flopping around like a cooked noodle. No response. Then Xuemei turned on me with eyes so red they looked infected. This is your fault. Why did you tell her? Why couldn't you keep your mouth shut? Because I'm not a turtle hiding in a shell? That's why. But I kept that thought to myself this time. Even I have limits. Small ones, but they exist. I crouched down and checked Lu Lan's breathing. Nose still working. Air going in and out. Not dead. Just passed out from the cocktail of starvation, shock, and emotional devastation. Classic combo. Xiao Ling started crying too. Tiny broken sounds. Auntie. Mama's hungry. Xiao Ling is hungry. That one sentence ripped Xuemei apart. I could literally see her soul splitting, half worried about her sister-in-law on the ground, half destroyed by her niece on the floor. Tears running down her face like someone turned on a faucet. I looked around and took inventory of my new life. One woman, unconscious. One woman, crying. One child, starving on the floor. One me, broke. For people approximately one business day away from death, crammed into a dirt house while it's -30 outside and the mountains are buried in snow. All right, quit crying, I said. I reached down, scooped Lu Lan off the ground, and carried her to the bed. She weighed about as much as a large opinion. I set her on the warm spot on the brick bed, and she frowned slightly, letting out a tiny groan. Still alive. Good enough. Don't touch my sister-in-law. Xiaomei lunged at me, genuinely terrified I was about to go for round 2 with a different contestant. Relax. Who wants to? I snapped back. Seriously, I'm starving to death and she thinks I'm in the mood? My stomach is digesting itself, and she's worried about my libido? Priorities, woman. I went and tossed some firewood into the stove. At least we wouldn't freeze. Then I stood up, dusted off my hands, and surveyed my 3 new burdens. On the bed, Lu Lan, unconscious. Next to her, Xiaoling, barely breathing. In the corner, Xiaomei, curled up like a wounded animal. 3 women, each one more helpless than the last. Honestly, I didn't want any part of this. These were 3 anchors tied to my ankles while I was already drowning. If it was just Xiaomei, fine. I owed her something since I technically scammed her. But her sister-in-law and niece? That's bonus baggage I never ordered. I made myself a deal right there. If these 3 can be useful somehow down the road, they can stay. If not, sorry ladies, this lifeboat has a weight limit, and the captain comes first. Xiaomei came at me again. I don't know where she found the energy. Maybe rage has its own calorie supply. Her fists landed on my back like someone throwing cotton balls at a brick wall. Didn't even sting. I didn't bother turning around. Just reached back, grabbed her arm like snagging laundry off a line, and steered her back onto the bed with one smooth push. Sat her down like a toddler who wandered too far from the table. Can you behave? Isn't this messy enough already? She nearly cracked her head on the wall behind her. You son of a... Let go of me. I let go. Then I hit her with the ultimatum. Scream one more time, and you can get out. Stay? Then shut it. That worked. She looked at her unconscious sister-in-law. Looked at little Xiaoling on the floor. Did the math. Bit her tongue, so hard I thought she'd draw blood. Smart girl. Annoying, but smart. I walked over and picked Xiaoling up off the ground myself. This kid weighed absolutely nothing. For years old and lighter than a scarecrow made of straw. I was genuinely afraid my fingers would snap something if I squeezed too hard. She was mumbling, Auntie, Annie, in this tiny thread of a voice, like a radio running out of batteries. Quit calling for your auntie, I told her. Your auntie's too busy crying to help anyone right now. I put her on the warm bed next to Lu Lan. The little mouse immediately burrowed into her mother's side, nuzzled in twice, and went still, like a baby animal finding its nest. Something about that hit different, but I shoved that feeling into a drawer and locked it. Xiaomei watched me handle the kid. Her lips trembled. She wanted to curse me out. I could see the words lined up behind her teeth like soldiers waiting for orders. But the order never came. Progress. Then Lu Lan's eyelids flickered. The unconscious woman was rebooting. Sis, Xiaomei scrambled over. Lu Lan's eyes cracked open like old windows. Blurry. Confused. She spotted Xiaomei's face first. Xiaomei. Then her gaze drifted to me, and I watched the memory reload in real time. Her eyes went red instantly. She grabbed Xiaomei's hand like it was a life rope. Xiaomei. Did he? Xiaomei turned her face away. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. That head turn was a full confession, signed and stamped. Case closed. Jury dismissed. Lu Lan's brain connected all the dots in about half a second. Her face twisted up and she launched herself at me like a woman possessed. You animal. How could you trick Xiaomei? Are you even human? I gave her a light push. One push. She stumbled sideways like a bowling pin in a breeze. Bounced right back up though, pointing her finger at me, shaking with rage. You ruined my sister-in-law. You worthless scumbag. You deserve to be shot. Sis, stop. It's my fault, Xiaomei said quietly, eyes dead. Your fault? He's the one who tricked you. And then they started going back and forth. Blame ping pong. He's a beast. No, it's my fault. No, he's a beast. No, really, it's my fault. On and on and on. I stood there watching this tennis match of misery bounce between 2 starving women who could barely stand up, and I genuinely wanted to bang my head against the wall. Enough, I cut in. Save your energy for staying alive. That shut Lu Lan up mid-sentence. Her mouth hung open for 2 full seconds like a fish on dry land. Then she got even angrier, but her body disagreed with her spirit. Her vision was going dark, stomach cramping, legs wobbling. The engine was running on zero fuel, and the dashboard lights were all flashing red. Xiaomei wiped her tears. Sis, let's go. I don't want to stay here another second. They tried to leave. Picture this. 2 women who haven't eaten in days, trying to hold each other up like 2 drunk noodles leaning against each other for support. They shuffled toward the door doing this sad little dance where neither one could actually support the other because gravity was winning against both of them simultaneously. Xiaoling whimpered from the bed. Mama. Lulan turned around to grab her kid, bent down, and nearly face-planted again. Her eyes went black on the way down. Almost a repeat performance of the dramatic fainting from 5 minutes ago. I'm starting to think this woman's favorite hobby is almost dying. Xiaomei picked up Xiaoling instead. The little girl buried her face in Xiaomei's neck, and even her body heat felt cold. That's a special kind of starving, when even your warmth runs out. They stumbled to the door. 3 broken people trying to walk into a blizzard. Meanwhile, my brain was doing something useful for once. I was thinking hard. Where do you find food when there is no food? When every house in the village is empty? When the whole mountain is buried under snow? Then it hit me like a frozen tree branch to the face. Debt collection. The original Chinfong, that beautiful scumbag, had lent people stuff before, or done favors, or whatever shady transactions village deadbeats do. Point is, people owed him. Time to cash in. I stood up and walked to the door. Looked at Xiaomei one more time. Sighed internally. I still owed her too. Promised goods not delivered. Outstanding balance on the books. If you 3 want to survive, I said, not looking back, stay here. I'm going out. I'll be back soon. Then I walked out into that freezing hellscape without another word. Behind me, Lulan and Xiaomei stared at my back. I could feel their eyes boring into me like 2 confused, angry, starving laser beams. Lulan was actually thinking about it though. I could tell. Home was far. Xiaoling was fragile. They had 0 food at their place anyway. And Xiaomei was. Well, she was walking funny. Not exactly marathon ready. Xiaomei, maybe we should go back inside? Lulan whispered. Go back into his house. He's a liar and a fraud. Xiaomei's mouth was saying no, but her knees were saying yes, please God, yes. But you can barely walk. And there's nothing at home either. They both looked at Xiaoling. Tiny. Fragile. Barely breathing. Xiaomei's anger was real. Her pain was real. But dead people can't be angry or hurt. She swallowed her pride like it was broken glass going down. Lulan gently pushed her back through the door. They went inside. Sometimes survival tastes worse than starvation. But you swallow it anyway. I kicked down Li Dahuai's front gate like I was delivering a pizza nobody ordered. The wooden door slammed open, bounced off the fence, and I caught it with one hand. Dramatic entrance? Absolutely. Did I practice it? None of your business. Inside, the Holy Family was having themselves a cozy little winter evening. Papa Li Dahuai sat cross-legged on the heated bed puffing his tobacco pipe like a retired emperor. Mama Wang Ho-Hot was patching clothes on the edge. Big son Li Jitsai squatted by the fire pit feeding it little scraps of wood. Little son Li Jiming leaned against the wall with his hands tucked in his sleeves, eyes closed, napping like he didn't know anybody anything in this world. Must be nice. A warm room, a fire, and 0 guilt. Beautiful. I pushed the bedroom door open and cold wind followed me in like my +1. Ashes from the fire pit went flying everywhere. Who is it? Close the door. Wang Ho-Hot yelled without even looking up. I didn't close anything. I stood there, scanned the whole family like a cashier scanning groceries, and opened my mouth. Li Dahuai. The old man peeked up at me over his pipe. Oh, Fengzi. What brings you here? All casual. All neighborly. Like I just stopped by to borrow sugar. I skipped the small talk and went straight for the throat. Your 2 sons borrowed half a gene of meat from me. Today they pay up. The room got real quiet real fast. Li Dahuai's pipe froze halfway to his mouth. Wang Ho-Hot's needle stopped mid-stitch. Jitsai glanced up once, then looked back down like the fire suddenly got super interesting. Jiming cracked one eye open and gave me the laziest side-eye in human history. What meat? Li Dahuai played dumb, tapping ash off his pipe. Who borrowed meat? I don't know anything about this. Then ask your boys. Jitsai. Go ahead. Tell your daddy. Jitsai squatted there frozen, his eyeballs sliding toward his father like a nervous fish. Fengzi, You must be confused. When did I ever borrow meat from you? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? He scratched his head like a bad actor in a village play. I don't remember that. I smiled. Not the friendly kind. The kind that comes right before furniture starts breaking. Fine. You don't remember. I stepped closer, leaned over the bed, and looked down at Li Dahuai. Maybe help your son think harder. The old man set his pipe down slowly, leaned back, and put on his respected elder voice. Now, Fengzi. You came here to pick a fight? We're all neighbors. Let's talk this out nicely. I talked nicely. You didn't understand. Then I spotted something beautiful. A clay pot on the edge of the bed with a bowl flipped upside down on top. I reached over and lifted the bowl. 2 golden corn cakes. Still warm. Steam still rising. My eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Well. Your family's eating corn cakes, huh? Fancy. Wang Hoha launched off the bed like a rocket. Hey, put that down. That's our family's food. I blocked her with one arm. She bounced off me like a tennis ball hitting a wall. Didn't even have to try. Your family's food? I set the bowl down without touching the cakes. Just made my point. And my half gene of meat? That was my food. Where is it? Li Dahuai's face changed colors. Not scared, just insulted. He was a big man in this village. Respected elder. And here's the neighborhood deadbeat kicking doors down and demanding repayment in front of his whole family. His pride was having a really bad day. Fengzi, calm down, he said, voice dropping lower. Even if my boys did borrow something, that's between you and them. Why come to my house making a scene? Between me and them. They live here. Eat your food. Sleep under your roof. They borrow and don't pay. Who else am I supposed to ask? The wind. I said I didn't borrow anything. Jitsai finally stood up, face red as a tomato. Stop making stuff up? I looked at him. Didn't respond. Just walked calmly to the corner of the room. There was a hoe leaning against the wall, and next to it, a wooden stool. I picked up the stool. What are you doing? Li Dahuai's but lifted off the bed. Helping your son's memory. Bang. I swung that stool into the edge of the stove like I was hitting a home run. Dust rained from the ceiling. The bowls on the shelf started doing a little earthquake dance, rattling and clinking. One chipped bowl rolled right off the edge, hit the ground, and cracked clean in half. My bowl, Wang Hohat screamed. I planted the stool legs on the ground and stared at Jitsai. Remember now? He backed up half a step, mouth opening and closing like a goldfish on dry land. Here's the truth. He absolutely borrowed that meat. 2 weeks ago, the original Chinfong somehow got a piece of meat, and these 2 brothers showed up at his door acting all friendly. Just half a gene, bro. We'll pay you back in 2 days. The old Chinfong was a pushover. Gave them the meat without even getting a hard word in. 2 days became 2 weeks. The brothers had zero intention of paying back anything, ever. But admitting it now meant returning it. And half a gene of meat during a famine is worth more than gold. More than land. More than your firstborn, probably. Even if you smash my whole house it won't help, Jitsai said. Chin up, neck stiff. I didn't borrow, and I have no proof. I mean, you have no proof. Nice save there, genius. Almost confessed by accident. I nodded slowly. Cool. Then I lifted the stool again. Wait. Li Dahuai jumped off the bed and grabbed the stool leg. You maniac. 2 more swings and my stove is done for. Then tell your son to open his mouth and say something honest. Jitsai. The old man whipped around and roared at his firstborn. Did you borrow it or not? Jitsai pressed his lips into a tight line. Silent. Li Dahuai turned to his younger son. Jiming? Jiming had been leaning against the wall this entire time watching the show like it was free entertainment. He slowly pulled his hands out of his sleeves, rolled his eyes, and shrugged. Yeah, we borrowed it. So what? It's just half a gene of meat. Does he really need to come here and throw a tantrum? Finally. Confession from the lazy one. Beautiful. I put the stool down gently. Smiled. Good. Pay up. Who said I'm paying? Jiming pushed off the wall and stood up straight. He was half a head shorter than me, but acted like he was looking down. I said it's not worth this drama. We'll pay you back in a couple days. A couple days? I tilted my head. That's what you said last time. It's been half a month. How many couple of days is that? He puffed up his chest and stepped forward. Chinfong, don't push your luck. You're a nobody. A village bum. You think you can come into my house and act tough. He started rolling up his sleeves. I watched him do it. Let him have his little tough guy moment. Then I changed the deal. Half a gene of meat, plus 1 gene of corn flour. The room went dead silent. Li Dehuai looked at me like I just asked for his kidney. What? Interest, I said. It's been 2 weeks. A loan's gotta have interest, right? Jiming stuck his neck out like a confused turtle. Half a gene of meat plus a gene of cornflower? Chinfong, are you dreaming? The only one dreaming is your mother for raising you. I'm wide awake. I stepped forward. He stepped up too, rolling his sleeve like an action hero in a village drama. Credit where it's due. The guy actually threw a real punch. Aimed at my face, decent speed, actual commitment. By village standards? Solid 7 out of 10. By my standards? Adorable. I tilted my head left. His fist sailed past my ear like a bird that forgot how to land. The momentum carried him forward, his whole body leaning in with nothing to hit, feet stumbling, balance completely gone. He looked like a man trying to hug the air and losing. I slapped him. One clean, beautiful, perfectly calibrated slap across the left cheek. Not too hard, not too soft. Just enough power to sting for a week and echo in his nightmares for a lifetime. The sound? Chef's kiss. That crisp crack bounced off every wall in the room. Jiming spun like a top. Shoulders smacked the bed frame, body bounced into the wall, back of his skull thumped against the dirt surface, and little chunks of dried mud rained down on his head like sad confetti. He slid down the wall and landed on his butt, eyes spinning in circles trying to remember what planet he was on. The room went absolutely silent. Wang Hohat's jaw dropped so hard her sewing needle fell onto the bed, and she didn't even notice. Li Dahuai's pipe hung frozen in midair, mouth opening and closing like he was trying to speak underwater. Jitsai? Still squatting. Legs might as well have been made of concrete. The man was a statue with a heartbeat. Jiming tried getting up, arms shaking, pushing against the floor, halfway there. Nope. Back down he went. His left cheek was puffing up like bread dough in real time. Blood leaked from the corner of his mouth. I walked over and put my foot on his back, not stomping, just resting, pinning him to the ground like a fish on a cutting board. He could flop around all he wanted. He wasn't going anywhere. Get off me, he screamed into the floor, mouth full of dirt. I leaned forward a little, added some weight, just a taste. Listen carefully because I'm only saying this once. Half a gene of meat. 1 gene of cornflower. Interest. You don't pay? I'll rip your leg off and burn it for firewood. His face twisted into a pretzel of pain and rage. You wouldn't dare? My father is. I pressed down harder. HHH. Your father? He's standing right there watching. You want him to save you? Go ahead, call him. I looked over at Li Dehuai. The old man swallowed hard enough for me to hear it across the room. 47 years of village wisdom staring back at me, and every single year was telling him the same thing. This kid fights different. He'd watched his son throw that punch. A real punch, aimed well, thrown with force. And I dodged it like I was swatting a fly. The slap came back so fast his old eyes couldn't even track it. This wasn't the usual village brawling where 2 guys windmill their arms at each other until someone falls over. This was something else entirely. Fengzi, Li Dahuai croaked. Take your foot off him. Let's talk. Talk? We tried talking. You pretended nobody owed me anything. Talking time is over. I added another fraction of pressure. Just a pinch. Oh, Dad, help me. Fengzi, this is our fault. You're right. Li Dahuai was rubbing his hands together now, every wrinkle on his face trembling. They borrowed your stuff. They should pay. Absolutely, they should pay, Dad. You. Jitsai started to protest. Shut your mouth. Li Dahuai roared at his older son so hard the veins on his neck popped out like ropes. Then he whipped back to me with a completely different face, smiling, groveling, practically bowing. Fengzi, please, lift your foot. Jiming is young. He doesn't know better. Be the bigger man here. Skip the speech. Bring me my stuff. We don't have meat. Wang Hohat wailed from the bed. Look at this house. Where would we get meat? Search it yourself if you don't believe. Okay, I said calmly, and pressed down a little more on Jiming's spine. Stop talking. Please stop. Wang Hohat's mouth clamped shut. Tears started falling down her cheeks. I was done being patient. Patience left the building, caught a train, and moved to another province. I'm going to count to 5. When I'm done, if nothing's in my hands, I stop stepping on his back. And I start stepping on his fingers. Jiming's whole body seized up. Fingers. If his hands get crushed, he can never work again. In this era, no hands means no farming, no chopping, no survival. Hands are everything. Dad, go get it. Now, he howled from the floor. 1. Li Dahuai spun around and bolted for the other room, stumbling like his legs forgot the sequence. 2. Wang Hohat slid off the bed and chased after him. 3. From the other room, chaos. Lids banging, jars scraping the floor, boxes being thrown open. The beautiful symphony of people finding things they swore didn't exist. 4. Here. It's here. Li Dahuai's voice cracked through the wall, soaked in tears. 5. I didn't stop counting. Deadlines are deadlines. Li Dahuai came crashing back into the room, tripping over his own feet, holding a piece of something wrapped in old cloth in one hand and a fabric bag in the other. Sweating in -30 weather. Crying while handing over food he swore he didn't have 30 seconds ago. Funny how a foot on someone's spine turns, we don't have anything, into, here it is, please stop. People aren't mean because they want to be. They're mean because they think you're too soft to do anything about it. You show them different, and suddenly everyone remembers their manners, finds their misplaced groceries, and discovers a deep respect for debt repayment. You can't stand firm in this world unless you're willing to be hard. That's not cruelty. That's math. Li Dahuai came stumbling back into the room holding that wrapped-up meat like it was his firstborn child being handed over to a kidnapper. He tripped on the door frame and almost ate the floor. Wang Hohat shuffled behind him, clutching a half-empty cloth bag with an expression on her face like someone was peeling off her skin one strip at a time. My foot was still parked on Jiming's back. I looked down at what the old man brought me. Open it. He peeled back the cloth. A chunk of frozen meat, hard as a rock, dark-colored, with bits of grass stuck to it. Looked like it had been hiding for a while. I picked it up, weighed it in my hand, scratched the frozen surface with my thumbnail, and gave it a sniff. Not rotten. Frozen solid. In this weather, meat keeps for ages. Weight felt right too. Half a jean, maybe a hair over. Fine. I stuffed it inside my coat. Li Dahuai's shoulders dropped about 6 inches. Relief washed over his face like warm water. He opened his mouth to say something. Probably. Okay, now please leave my house forever. But my hand was already reaching toward Wang Hohat's cloth bag. She yanked it behind her back like a kid hiding candy. That's our cornflour. It has nothing to do with you. Interest, I said. 2 syllables. All I needed. What interest? You said half a jean of meat. You got your meat. What else do you want? Her voice hit a pitch that could shatter ice. I glanced down at Jiming. He was still on the ground, whimpering, left cheek pressed against the cold dirt floor, face swollen up like rising dough, blood trailing from his lip into the soil. A beautiful painting of consequences. What I said earlier. Did you all go deaf? Or are you just pretending? I lifted my foot off Jiming. Not because I felt bad. Because the meat was already in my pocket and standing on one leg was getting tiring. Jiming rolled over, pushed himself up with shaking arms, and sat there holding his face. His mouth opened to curse me, but then his eyes met mine, and those words reversed direction real fast. Went right back down the throat they came from. Smart decision. First one he'd made all day. I walked up to Wang Hohat. She backed up until her spine hit the stove. Nowhere left to go. She hugged that bag tighter, knuckles white, eyes wild. This is our lifeline. For mouths depend on this flour. You took the meat, and it's still not enough? Are you even human? Whether I'm human is none of your concern. Give it. I held my palm out. Open. Waiting. No. Kill me first. I didn't feel like killing anyone today. Too much paperwork. Instead, I grabbed the bottom corner of the bag and pulled. She grabbed the top and pulled back. And just like that, we were playing tug-of-war over a bag of corn flour in a dirt house in the middle of a famine. 2 adults yanking a sack back and forth. Very dignified. Very adult. Old man, Dio something, she screamed at her husband. Li Dahuai stood there like a mannequin someone left in a field. Mouth opening and closing. Hands hanging at his sides not knowing where to go. Do something? Do what? He'd just watched his younger son, the best fighter in the family, throw a solid punch at my face and miss by a mile. One slap later, the kid was decorating the floor with his cheekbone. Jiming was supposed to be the tough one, and he lasted about 2 seconds. Li Dahuai was 47 with bad legs. He did the math. The math said sit down. Wife. Just give it to him, he said, voice flat as stale bread. What? Wang Hohat's eyeballs nearly popped out. That's a whole jean of cornflour. Do you know how many meals that is if we stretch it? I know. But if you make him angry, he won't stop at 1 jean. He'll carry out 10. Her mouth twitched. Brain still processing. But while she was calculating, my arms weren't waiting. I gave one good yank and ripped the bag clean out of her grip. She stumbled forward, grabbed air, and sat down hard on the edge of the stove. My flour. I bounced the bag in my hand. Light. Couldn't be more than a jean inside. I opened it up and peeked in. Rough ground corn flour, yellowish, mixed with some coarse bran. Not exactly five-star ingredients. But it would cook into something edible, and right now edible was luxury. Wang Hohot started cursing me from the floor. High-pitched, rapid-fire, creative vocabulary. I have to admit, the woman had range. Different octaves, different insults, impressive stamina for someone who claimed to be starving. I tied the bag, tossed it over my shoulder, and walked out the front door like I owned the whole village. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Behind me, the Li household collapsed into itself. Li Dahuai dropped onto the bed and reached for his pipe with hands shaking so bad it took him 3 tries to grab it. Wang Hohot's cursing faded into a long, sad wail about how 1 jean of corn flour could have fed them for 2 days if they rationed carefully. Enough! Li Dahuai smacked his pipe on the bed. He's gone. Who are you screaming for? I'm screaming for you. You useless coward. A deadbeat walks into your home, robs you blind, and you just stand there. Are you a man or a scarecrow? Oh yeah? Why didn't you fight him? Go ahead. You saw what happened to Jiming's face. 1 slap. You want to test if your face can handle it. That shut her up. Jitsai finally stood, dusted off his pants, lips pressed together so tight, they disappeared. Jiming crawled up the wall to standing position, swaying twice before he found balance. His left cheek looked like someone had inflated it with a bicycle pump. Speaking made a whistling sound through his busted lip. Dad, we can't let him get away with this. Shut up, Li Dahuai barked, way louder than anything he'd said to me. Funny how that works. If you could beat him, why didn't you? When you were face down on the floor screaming for daddy, where was all this tough talk? Jiming's face turned purple. No comeback available. The truth was sitting on his swollen cheek like a neon sign. The room went heavy and quiet. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Just 4 humiliated people sitting in a cold room, missing half a jean of meat and a jean of corn flour they pretended they didn't have. Finally, Li Dahuai blew out a long stream of smoke and muttered the only smart thing anyone in that family said all day. Stay away from him. Don't start trouble. I trudged back through the snow to my own front door and pushed. Locked. So the 3 stray cats I accidentally adopted decided to stay after all. Interesting. I banged on the door and Lu Lan cracked it open with a face that screamed, I hate you, but I live here now. I squeezed past her without making eye contact. Not because I was avoiding her. I just had more important things to look at, like food. I dropped the bag of corn flour on the stove counter. Then I pulled the frozen chunk of meat from inside my coat and slammed it down next to it. Made a nice solid thwack sound. Presentation matters. Lu Lan glanced over. Then she did a double take so hard I thought her neck would snap. She crept closer, eyes locked on that frozen brick of pork like it was a diamond sitting on my dirty kitchen counter. Is that meat? No, it's a decorative rock. Yes, it's meat. Her lips started trembling, and I could practically hear the gears in her brain grinding. 5 minutes ago, she wanted to murder me. Now she was looking at me like I just walked on water. Funny how half a jean of frozen pork rewrites your entire opinion of a person. She yelled for Xiaomei. Xiaomei hobbled out from the bedroom, leaning on the door frame like a wounded soldier, and her eyes landed on the stove. Meat. Corn flour. Her jaw dropped open and just stayed there for about 4 seconds. You could have parked a bicycle in her mouth. Neither of them expected this. The village deadbeat actually delivered. Late, through questionable methods, and technically it wasn't even the same meat he originally promised, but the receipt matched. Half a jean of protein, sitting right there, real as winter. They stood there staring at it like 2 people who'd just witnessed a miracle performed by the last guy they'd ever expect to perform one. I let them have their moment. Then I ruined it. You 2 done drooling? Start cooking. One of you cuts. One of you does the fire. I haven't eaten all day. Xiaomei's head whipped toward me. You want me to cook for you? Your ears broken? Cook. Food. Now. Why should I take orders from you? Because I'm the one who brought the groceries. Don't like it? Door's right there. Leave. And you get 0. She opened her mouth to say, fine, I'll leave. And then her brain caught up with her pride about halfway through the sentence. She remembered little Xiao Ling on the bed. Freezing cold outside. No firewood at home. No food at home. Nothing at home. Her voice just stopped, like a car running out of gas mid-highway. Lulan jumped in before the situation exploded again. She walked past me, paused, stared at my face for 2 awkward seconds with the most complicated expression I've ever seen on a human being. Hatred, gratitude, confusion, shame, and something resembling respect, all fighting for control of one face. Then quietly said, "I'm sorry. Please don't kick us out. Now that was unexpected. The woman who called me an animal 10 minutes ago just apologized. I respected it. She wasn't doing it for herself. She was doing it for her kid and her sister-in-law. A mother protecting her people, even if it meant swallowing a bowling ball of pride." She grabbed the cleaver and got to work on the meat. Problem: frozen solid. Couldn't cut it. Solution: boil some water, dunk the meat, wait for the surface to thaw, then slice. Smart woman. She wasn't wasting a single crumb either. Skin, fat, gristle, every microscopic shred got scraped into the bowl with the tip of the knife. In a famine, you don't throw away anything. You'd eat the cutting board if it had flavor. Xiaomei squatted by the stove and started the fire. Took her 2 tries to light the match. Cornstalks crackled in the firebox and the bellows started pumping, that rhythmic wooden clunking sound filling the kitchen. Little Xiao Ling appeared from nowhere and parked herself next to the stove, nose practically inside the pot, sniffing so hard I thought she'd inhale the steam. "Mama, it smells so good." "Good?" I sniffed. All I could smell was wet firewood and boiling mystery. Without seasoning, this was going to taste like hot regret. But to a kid who hadn't eaten in days, boiling shoe leather probably smelled like a 5-star restaurant. "It's not ready yet, baby." "Wait. I don't want to wait. I want it now." "Oh no. We're not doing this." I shut that down immediately. "Hey, one more peep and you don't eat at all." Xiaoling's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. She dove behind her mother's legs like a soldier taking cover, mouth clamped shut so fast I heard her teeth click. But her little eyeballs were still peeking around Lulan's knee, locked on that pot. Obedient, but not surrendering visual contact with dinner. Clever kid. Lulan sliced the thawed meat piece by piece, mixed the corn flour with water, kneaded it into dough, and started slapping corn cakes onto the inside wall of the iron pot in a circle. Golden little discs lined up like soldiers. The meat went into the water with them. Stew and bread, all in one pot. Then, miracle of miracles, there was actually salt left in the jar? In this house. I was genuinely shocked. This might be the single most valuable thing the original Chinfong owned without knowing it. Lid went on. Everything boiled together. Within minutes, the smell of meat broth started leaking through the edges of the pot lid. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't seasoned properly. It wasn't going to win any cooking awards. But in that freezing dirt kitchen with 4 starving people, it smelled like the gates of heaven had cracked open just enough to let one whiff through. Lulan's hands were shaking while she kneaded. Xiaomei was pumping that bellows faster and faster without realizing it. Clunk, 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 like her subconscious was trying to speed cook the food through sheer willpower. I leaned against the wall with my arms crossed, watching all of this. And then, without really meaning to, my eyes drifted to Xiaomei. The heat from the stove had turned her cheeks pink. She was crouched down, reaching forward to feed another stick into the fire, and her sleeve slid back just enough to show a sliver of wrist. Pale white against the dark cotton. She must have felt me staring because she suddenly turned around and our eyes collided like 2 trains on the same track. I didn't look away. She went red from her neck to her hairline, shot me the dirtiest glare she could manage, and snapped her head back toward the fire. I smiled. Couldn't help it. Some things are worth surviving for. After dinner, the world was pitch black outside and barely lighter inside. The oil lamp was running on fumes. The flame shrank down to the size of a pea, flickering like it was begging for retirement. Lulan washed the dishes, Xiaomei stuffed the last 2 sticks into the stove, and the fire died with one final sparkle. The heated bed still had warmth in it, but it was living on borrowed time. "Kill the lamp." "Wasting oil," I said. Lulan turned the wick down, and the flame gave 2 sad little shivers, then quit. Darkness hit the room like a black curtain dropping on a stage. The kind of dark where you can't see your own hand. The kind where your other senses suddenly get promoted to management. Xiaoling was already out cold. The kid had eaten a few chunks of meat and half a corn cake, and her belly was round as a little drum. Head touched the pillow, and she powered off like someone pulled her battery. Sleeping against the wall, curled up tiny. Get on the bed. Sleep, I announced to the darkness. Xiaomei hesitated at the edge like the bed was made of lava. Lulan coaxed her up. She found a spot next to Xiaoling, turned her back to the outside, and wrapped herself up so tight she was basically a human burrito. Lulan took the other side of Xiaoling. Then I climbed on last, and the bed was officially full. For people lined up like sardines in a tin can. Me on the outside edge, Xiaomei right next to me, Xiaoling in the middle, Lulan against the wall. Turning over required a committee vote and advanced planning. Quiet settled in. Wind outside. Xiaoling's tiny breathing. Nothing else. Then I put my arm around Xiaomei's waist. She went stiff as a frozen fish. Every muscle in her body locked up simultaneously. I'm pretty sure her skeleton tried to leave her body. Xiu. My breath hit the back of her neck and she grabbed my wrist with both hands, trying to shove my arm off. She pushed. She pulled. My arm didn't move. I'm not bragging. She just had the grip strength of a tired kitten. I actually pulled her closer. Her back pressed flat against my chest. Let go, she hissed, voice crushed down to a whisper so small it could fit inside a thimble. There are people right here. We're sleeping. This is sleeping. All the blankets went to the kid. If I don't hold you, you'll freeze to death. You want to be a pretty ice sculpture? Because I don't need a pretty ice sculpture. She had no comeback for that. Logically, it made sense. Emotionally, she wanted to stab me with something sharp. The internal war between survival and dignity was raging behind her eyeballs, and I could practically hear the battle sounds. She squirmed twice more. My arm tightened. Iron grip. Not negotiable. Keep wiggling, and I'll do more than just hold you. She stopped moving so fast you'd think someone hit her pause button. Her face was generating enough heat to cook rice. I couldn't see it in the dark, but I could feel the radiation coming off her cheeks like a small campfire. My hand sat politely on her waist. Over the coat. Behaving itself. But the position alone was making her lose her mind. Every exhale of mine landed on the back of her neck like clockwork, and she was lying there counting each one, teeth clenched, fists balled up, mentally writing my obituary. On the other side of Xiaoling, Lulan was wide awake. Eyes open. Staring at the ceiling she couldn't see. She couldn't see anything, but her ears were working overtime. Every rustle of cotton on fabric, every whispered word, she caught all of it. Her hand found Xiaoling's arm in the dark, and she held on tight, like grabbing a life preserver. She knew Xiaomei was enduring. The bastard brought food, they ate it, and now nobody had the standing to tell him off. You can't bite the hand that literally just fed you. Even if that hand is currently wrapped around your sister-in-law. Lulan rolled over to face the wall and pulled the blanket corner over her ears. Didn't help. Still heard everything. Sometimes having functional hearing is a curse. Where is your hand going? Xiaomei's voice had dropped to pure air. No sound left. Just shaped breath. Nowhere. Your waist is bony. Finding a comfortable spot. You what? Aren't you warmer now? Silence. Because yes, she was warmer, and admitting it would be admitting defeat. So she chose the only remaining option, furious mute suffering. Her breathing got faster and shallower, the unmistakable rhythm of someone trying desperately to pretend nothing is happening while something is very clearly happening. This scoundrel brought weapons to a sleepover. She dug her fingernails into her own palm hard enough to leave marks, but her body was locked in his grip with nowhere to go. Slowly, whether from exhaustion or the genuine warmth of the heated bed, the tension started draining out of her muscles. One by one, like soldiers surrendering, I felt it happen in real time. The rigid board I was holding gradually became a person again. I kept quiet, didn't push my luck further. Hand stayed where it belonged. In the dark, nobody said another word. My brain shifted gears to practical matters. For people, one bed, one room. This arrangement was going to get old fast. Need to find an extra room somewhere, or this sleeping situation would remain a nightly circus. Earlier during dinner, little Xiaoling had accidentally spilled the beans about their home situation. 0 food, 0 firewood, 0 anything. Going back meant dying. They weren't leaving. I knew it. They knew it. Everyone knew it, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. So I laid down the house rules. 2 conditions for staying. 1. Listen to what I say. 2. Earn your keep. No freeloaders on this sinking ship. Either everybody rows or everybody drowns. Before dawn, I woke up. Shuame had somehow rotated in her sleep and was now facing me, forehead tucked under my chin, fingers clutching the front of my jacket in a death grip. Asleep, she was a completely different creature. No glaring, no cursing, no trying to claw my face off. Just a tired girl holding onto the nearest warm thing. I carefully extracted my arm, sat up on the edge of the cold bed. The fire had died hours ago, and the temperature had nosedived. Xiaoling was a tight little ball. Lu Lan was curled against the wall facing away from civilization. I got dressed and stepped into the outer room. Colder than a polar bear's opinion of me. Every breath came out as white fog. I stood at the stove and stared at our remaining supplies. The cornflour bag was nearly flat. The meat was down to a fist-sized lump. 2 days, maximum. After that, we're back to square one. 4 hungry mouths and an empty kitchen. Survival meant food. Food meant hunting. Hunting meant going up the mountain. But going up the mountain empty-handed? With what? Harsh language and good intentions. I needed tools. A slingshot, a bow, wire snares, anything. I rummaged through the outer room and found a half-burned stick. Weighed it in my hand. Useless. I needed real equipment. Time to go shopping. Village style. I stepped outside and the cold hit me like a personal insult from Mother Nature. Dawn was barely happening. The sky looked like dirty dishwater and the snow on the ground glowed that creepy pale white color. Fresh powder everywhere. Every step went crunch, crunch, crunch like I was walking on nature's bubble wrap. I'd been up half the night running calculations in my brain. Slingshot. Easy to make. Useless against anything bigger than a sparrow. Wire snares. Need wire, which I don't have. Bow and arrows. Perfect, but carving one from scratch would take forever, and without good would it'd shoot like a wet noodle. The fastest play was simple. Find someone who already has one, and take it. Lucky for me, the original Chinfong was a world-class loser, but an absolutely elite village spy. Years of wandering around being useless meant he'd accidentally memorized every household's inventory. And I knew exactly where a hunting bow lived, Li Dahuai's house. The same family I'd just shaken down yesterday. My favorite customers. I was walking east along the packed snow path, planning my approach, when the universe decided to save me a trip. Coming out of his family's yard, shoulders hunched, carrying a pole on one side and a bow in the other hand, Li Jiming. Yesterday's punching bag. Today's delivery service. That bow. Birchwood frame. Bowstring twisted from cattle tendon. Arm's length. Small but solid. By village standards, this was basically a sniper rifle. He spotted me too. We both stopped about 10 steps apart, standing in the snow like 2 cowboys in a winter western. His left cheek still wore my autograph from yesterday. The swelling had gone down, but the bruise remained. A lovely smear of purple-black like someone had wiped a dirty pan across his face. He tried to be brave. Puffed his chest out, tucked the bow behind his back like I hadn't already seen it, and squeezed out the toughest voice he could manage. What are you looking at? You. I kept walking toward him. Listen, about yesterday. His voice climbed a notch, trying to sound intimidating while slowly leaking courage. My dad told me to avoid you. But I'm no coward. Don't think just because you slapped me once that you can. I wasn't interested in his speech. 10 steps. 8. 5. He was still talking, words getting faster, panic starting to peek through the bravado. What do you want? I'm warning you. I'm not alone today. My brother's right behind. 3 steps. I kicked him in the stomach. Not my hardest kick, more of a firm suggestion. But his feet were on snow, traction was 0, and he went flying backward like a bowling pin. The pole sailed one direction, the bow went another, and Jiming went flat on his back in the snow, skull bouncing off the packed surface. Stars. Lots of stars. I walked over and put my foot on his chest. Same move as yesterday. I'm a creature of habit. His legs kicked twice and accomplished nothing. His face went bright red. The bruised half started throbbing again. I could practically see it pulsing. Not again, he wheezed from under my boot. I bent down and picked up the bow from the snow. Birch body, nice grip, string pulled tight. I flicked the bowstring with my finger and it hummed. Clean, sharp, musical. Beautiful piece of equipment. Whose bow is this? I asked, admiring it. That's MY family's bow. Put it down. I pulled the string back halfway, testing the draw weight. Solid. Enough power to drop a pheasant easy. Rabbits too, though they're mostly nocturnal, so that's a harder sell. Chinfong. Are you seriously robbing me right now? I looked down at him pinned in the snow beneath my foot. His face was a painting, rage, disbelief, humiliation, and leftover bruise all mixed together. Yes, I'm robbing you. What are you going to do about it? His mouth twitched. I think I genuinely broke something in his brain. He'd never encountered someone who just admitted it. No excuse, no justification, no polite fiction. Just, yep, robbery, deal with it. He lay there sputtering, then went for the nuclear option. You wait. I'll get my dad, my brother, the whole village. We'll deal with you. I squatted down, rested my elbow on my knee, and tapped the tip of the bow against his nose. Gentle, almost playful, like booping a dog. Go ahead, call them. And when they show up, I'll tell everyone a fun story about how Li Dahuai's younger son was sneaking out at dawn with a hunting bow headed for the mountains. What exactly were you doing, Jiming? Hunting. His mouth closed like someone slammed a book shut. I continued, still tapping his nose. This bow belongs to the production team. Public property. Got collected when hunting season ended. Your daddy, the workpoint recorder with convenient access, stole it and hid it in your family's shed. If the brigade leader finds out, what do you think happens to dear old dad? The color drained from his face faster than water down a drain. Because every word was true. This bow was village property. Li Dahuai had used his position to swipe it after the hunting squad disbanded in autumn. Almost nobody knew. But the original Chinfong, that magnificent, useless, unemployed spy, had seen Jiming sneaking the bow out of the shed one night and filed the information away in his garbage brain like a squirrel hiding a nut. That nut just became a weapon. How? How do you know about that? Jiming's voice had shrunk from roaring lion to confused hamster in about 4 seconds. I stood up, slung the bow over my shoulder, and lifted my foot off his chest. Doesn't matter how I know. What matters is what I do with what I know. Now you've got 2 choices. 1, I walk away with this bow, you go home, and nobody talks about anything. 2, you call the whole village like you promised, and I give everyone a history lesson about your family's sticky fingers. He lay in the snow staring up at the gray sky, doing math he wasn't built for. The answer was obvious, but his pride needed a minute to sign the paperwork. I didn't wait for his decision. I was already walking toward the mountain, bow on my shoulder, whistling something that probably wasn't a real song. Behind me, Jiming stayed flat on his back in the snow for a while. Didn't yell, didn't chase me, didn't call anybody. Smart boy, slow learner, but he gets there eventually. I lifted my foot off Jiming's chest and stepped back. He scrambled up, slapping snow off his butt, eyes bouncing between me and the bow like a dog watching its bone get carried away by a stranger. Chinfong, give me the bow back. We'll pretend none of this happened. Give it back? I took the bow off my shoulder and bounced it in my hand, feeling the weight. Nice. Let me ask you something. You've been taking this thing up the mountain. Have you actually caught anything? Silence. Well, have you? No, exactly. You're wasting a perfectly good bow. I clicked my tongue in disapproval. And what happens when you're stomping around up there and you bump into a militia patrol? Or someone from the commune office doing an inspection? Your daddy hid public property, Jiming. That secret has the structural integrity of wet paper. His Adam's apple bobbed. The kid wasn't stupid. He'd worried about this every single time he snuck the bow out. Jumping at shadows, knees going soft every time he saw a figure in the distance. But the family was starving, and his old man told him to try for a pheasant. So out he went with stolen equipment and 0 hunting skills. I shifted gears, dropped the menacing tone entirely, put on my concerned older brother who definitely has your best interests at heart voice. Oscar-worthy performance incoming. Let me explain something to you, Jiming. You're running around with the production team's bow. Getting caught is not a question of if, it's when. And when that happens, your dad gets a hat that says thief of public property slapped on his head. You know what that hat does in 1960? It stays on forever. Your whole family ends up standing on a stage at a struggle session while the entire village screams at you. Jiming's face went white. Not regular white. Paper white. Funeral white. You think only you and your family know about this bow. I leaned in half a step and dropped my voice to a whisper. Auntie Jo, you know her mouth. That woman is a biological loudspeaker. She's more effective than the tin megaphone on top of the brigade office. If she catches one whiff of this, by lunchtime every soul in the village knows your daddy is a thief. Jiming looked like he was about to throw up. Auntie Jo's gossip abilities were legendary. Information entered her ears and exited her mouth at the speed of light, gaining dramatic embellishment at every stage. She could turn "someone sneezed" into "plague outbreak in the Eastern District" in under 2 hours. So, what do I do? His voice was shaking now. Completely different human being from the tough guy who'd puffed his chest at me 30 seconds ago. Inside my head, fireworks were going off. Confetti cannons. A little version of me was doing a victory dance. On the outside, I furrowed my brow and put on my most sympathetic, worried face. This bow sitting in your house is a ticking bomb. You carrying it around is an even bigger bomb. Sooner or later, someone sees. Someone talks. Then boom, your family is finished. He swallowed hard enough for me to hear the gulp. But, I continued, letting the word hang in the air like bait on a hook. If this bow is in my hands, it's a completely different story. How's that different? What am I, Jiming? I'm the village deadbeat. Nobody respects me. Nobody watches me. Nobody cares what I do. If I walk up that mountain carrying a bow, what does anyone say? Oh look, that useless idiot found a broken bow somewhere. End of discussion. Nobody investigates. Nobody reports. Nobody thinks twice. Jiming's brain was visibly buffering, like a computer from 1995 trying to load a complex web page. The little hourglass spinning behind his eyeballs. But, my dad hid it. Your dad hid stolen property. In your shed, it's evidence. In your hands, it's a confession. In my hands, I flicked the bowstring and it hummed. It's just some junk a bum picked up from God knows where. Your family becomes clean. Commune inspectors search your shed top to bottom. Nothing. Your dad sleeps easy. Problem solved. Jiming's head was buzzing. He knew something was wrong with this logic. He could feel it in his bones. Like when you check a math test and all the answers look right, but you still got a D. Every sentence I said made perfect sense individually. Strung together, they made even more sense. The bow at home was dangerous. Getting caught was inevitable. His family would suffer. But somehow, at the end of all this beautiful logic, he was losing a bow and I was gaining one. I'm not taking it for free, I said, reading his tiny, confused mind like a picture book. I take the bow up the mountain. I catch something. I share with you. You don't risk your neck, you still eat meat, and your family's problem disappears. Tell me, did you lose or did you win? You'd share with me. Do I keep my word or not? Go ask your dad. Yesterday, I collected half a gene of meat and a gene of corn flour. Did I owe your family a single extra day? Paid same day, no outstanding balance. I let that sink in, then added the cherry on top. Yesterday I stepped on you. Walked away after. Didn't take anything extra. Today I kicked you. Didn't punch you afterward. You think that's normal? Go mess with Zhao Yuhua down the street and see what happens. That maniac caught someone's chicken wandering into his yard, wrung its neck, cooked it, and when the owner complained, he got mad at them. I'm practically a gentleman compared to these people. At least I explained things. Jiming stood in the snow, brain swimming in glue. He'd been kicked, robbed, and somehow talked into believing he came out ahead. He had fewer possessions than 5 minutes ago, but felt like he'd just been rescued from danger. You'll really share? Why would I lie? What do I gain from lying to you about meat? Imaginary pork chops? I slung the bow over my shoulder, scooped up the few arrows that came with it, and started walking. Go home, Jiming. Standing in the snow like an idiot is how you catch a cold, and then someone has to waste food keeping you alive. Not worth it. He stood there watching me walk away, scratching his head, carrying nothing but a pole and a face full of confusion. I could feel his eyes drilling into my back, trying to figure out the exact moment he got hustled. Somewhere in the back of his scrambled brain, a thought bubbled up. Did that guy just rob me and make me feel grateful about it? Yes, Jiming. Yes, I did. And that's the difference between a regular thief and an artist. I ducked into the tree line at the base of the mountain. Pine and birch growing together, branches heavy with snow, the occasional gust sending white powder cascading down like lazy confetti. The snow was waist-deep in spots but thinner near the trees where the wind had done some housekeeping. I pushed through, bow on my back, eyes scanning for tracks. Time to hunt. Time to earn my keep. Time to prove that this particular village deadbeat was worth more than the title suggested. The forest was dead quiet. Snow piled on every branch like nature's laziest decorator just dumped white paint on everything and called it a day. Occasionally a clump would fall off a pine tree and hit the ground with a soft thud, scaring absolutely nobody, except maybe a squirrel somewhere. I crouched down and spotted tracks in the fresh snow. 3 toes forward, 1 backward, shallow scratching marks, edges still crisp. I brushed aside some loose powder nearby and found a little nugget of black-green poop that hadn't frozen solid yet. Still warmish, meaning whatever left this behind was close. Very close. Wild pheasant. Had to be. I stood up slowly and scanned the area instead of charging in like an idiot. Left side. Row of ancient pine trees so thick I couldn't wrap my arms around one. Right side. Patch of short bushes covered in ice, with the snow underneath all scratched up, dead grass roots exposed. Something had been digging here for food. The tracks came from the pines, curved around, and headed straight for the bushes. I didn't follow the tracks directly. That's amateur hour. I looped wide and came in from downwind. Winter pheasants are paranoid little creatures. Hear one twig snap, and they're airborne before you can blink. But they've got one fatal weakness: they're greedy. Once they find a spot with seeds or roots, they keep coming back like a gambler who won $5 at a slot machine. The scratching marks got thicker near the bushes. I dropped low, practically kissing the snow, and crawled forward inch by inch. Then I slowly peeked over a small ridge of snow. There he was. One absolutely gorgeous male pheasant. And I do mean gorgeous. White ring around the neck, long tail feathers dragging in the snow behind him like a tiny feathered king wearing a cape. Handsome devil. Honestly, males really are the prettier ones in every species. It's just facts. He was about a gene, maybe a little over a pound, head buried in the snow, digging for seeds, completely unaware that death was admiring his outfit from 30 meters away. I reached behind my back and pulled an arrow from the quiver, slowly, like I was defusing a bomb made of silence. The arrow seated on the string, and the bow let out a whisper of a creak. The pheasant didn't flinch. Still digging. Still being handsome. Still having the last carefree moment of his life. I drew the bow back. 30 meters. At this distance, everything depended on the bow's quality and my aim. The birch bough Jiming so generously donated to my cause was solid, but 30 meters with a homemade arrow at a target the size of a football? Not exactly easy mode. I lined up the shot, aimed at the chest, biggest target, best odds. When I squinted, breath held, every muscle locked, released. The bowstring snapped forward and the arrow hissed through the cold air. Both sounds happened so close together they were practically the same noise. The arrow punched into the pheasant's chest and buried itself deep, the impact shoving the bird backward half a foot. He flapped his wings twice, panicked, confused, already dying, legs kicking at nothing, trying to launch into the sky for one last escape. I sprinted over and grabbed him by the comb on his head. One sharp twist. Crack. Lights out, pretty boy. Sorry about your neck. Nothing personal. I yanked the arrow out. Blood sprayed briefly, then slowed, then stopped. In this cold, everything freezes fast, including regret. Not that I had any. This bird was groceries. I held him up and weighed him in my hand. Just over a gene. Skinny, but in a famine you don't complain about portion sizes. First hunt, first kill, first success. Not bad for a village deadbeat with a stolen bow and zero formal training. I flipped him upside down and started walking home, plucking feathers as I went. One step, one handful of feathers. One step, another handful. You have to strip them while the body's still warm. Once it freezes, those feathers lock in tighter than a miser's wallet, and you'll be there all day picking at a frozen chicken like a lunatic. By the time I reached the edge of the forest, my pheasant was basically naked, and I was leaving a trail of feathers behind me like the world's most disturbing Hansel and Gretel. I also grabbed a bundle of firewood on the way back. Multitasking. Because when you're the sole provider for 3 useless dependents and yourself, every trip counts double. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally made it home. Kicked through the snow in the yard, knocked on the door. Lulan's muffled voice came through the wood. Who is it? Open up. The door cracked open. I swung the firewood off my shoulder and leaned it against the wall. Lulan reached out to take it. Then her eyes drifted to my other hand. She froze. Completely. Like someone pressed her pause button with a brick. In my hand dangled a fully plucked, gutted, cleaned pheasant. Headless, featherless, with a hole in its chest and frozen stiff as a board. Her mouth fell open and just stayed there. I could have parked a corn cake in it. You? This? Inside. Move. I squeezed past her, stuffed the bird into her arms, dropped the firewood, and slammed the door. She stood there cradling that naked pheasant like someone had just handed her a newborn baby made of solid gold. She carried it into the bedroom like a religious artifact. Xiaomei took one look and her brain short-circuited for about 5 seconds. Just stared at the bird. Then stared at me. Then back at the bird. Mouth doing that opening and closing thing without producing any words. I leaned the bow against the wall, dropped onto the bed, kicked off my boots, and shoved my frozen feet onto the warm surface. Then I pointed my chin at the dead bird in Lu Lan's shaking hands. You two going to stare at it until it comes back to life? Cook it. I'm starving. Lu Lan snapped out of her trance, wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Yeah, she was crying again. This woman cried more than a broken faucet, and hustled to the kitchen. Yesterday's meal had put enough fuel in her tank to actually move without collapsing, so that was progress. I glanced at Xiaomei. Still hurting, she gave me the coldest, most dismissive little snort in human history and limped off the bed to go help her sister-in-law. But she wanted to help cook my food. And she didn't argue about it this time. Progress. 4 o'clock. The iron pot was bubbling like a witch's cauldron and Lu Lan was going full butcher mode on my pheasant, chopping it into perfect little pieces with a cleaver, her whole body swaying with each swing. I'm not going to lie, I noticed things. The widow's sister-in-law had some serious physical qualifications hiding under that rough cotton outfit, especially when she bent over to feed the fire. I sat cross-legged on the heated bed watching through the doorway like a man enjoying dinner theater before the actual dinner. When the meat hit the boiling water, the smell crawled through the house like an invisible ghost made entirely of deliciousness. In 1960, smelling actual meat cooking was basically a religious experience. Churches wished they could offer this kind of spiritual awakening. Lu Lan's brain was doing somersaults while she stirred. Yesterday, she wanted to chop me into pieces. Today she was happily chopping a chicken for me. Funny what a hot meal does to a grudge. I could practically hear her internal monologue rewriting itself in real time. This scumbag is actually useful. He brings food. Maybe I shouldn't murder him after all. He's kind of okay looking when he's not stepping on people. Fengzi. Food's ready. She even upgraded my name. Yesterday I was, you animal. Today I'm, Fengzi. Tomorrow at this rate she'll be calling me, dear. She carried in a big clay pot full of chicken stew and 4 corn cakes. Xiao Ling was practically vibrating next to the table, drool waterfalling down her chin, eyes locked on the meat like a tiny heat-seeking missile. I picked up the ladle and started distributing. Me first, obviously. 2 drumsticks, a fat slab of breast meat, a full bowl of soup. The captain eats before the crew. That's maritime law. I'm pretty sure. Then I scooped Xiao Ling a bowl, some broth, 2 soft pieces of chicken. Eat. Don't burn yourself. She grabbed a corn cake and started inhaling food so fast I was worried she'd accidentally eat the bowl too. Thank you, Uncle Chun. She mumbled through a mouthful of everything. Lu Lan taught her that. Good. Manners matter, even in a famine. I gave Lu Lan a generous serving, plenty of meat chunks. Her eyes went wide like I'd just proposed marriage. Thank you, Fengzi. She was nodding so fast her head might have fallen off. Last bowl. I put in half a serving of soup, 1 chicken wing, 1 chicken butt, and some scraps. Slid it across to Xiaomei, who was sitting in the far corner of the bed, radiating hatred like a space heater running on pure spite. Come eat, I said, tapping the table. She turned her head away, didn't even glance at the bowl. I'm not eating. I laughed. Look at you, all dignified. What's wrong? My pheasant isn't fancy enough for the princess? She snorted. Anything you touched is dirty. The temperature in the room dropped about 15 degrees. Lu Lan nearly choked on her chicken, set down her bowl, and grabbed Xiaomei's sleeve in a panic. Xiaomei, what are you saying? Come eat. This is meat. Xiaomei yanked her arm free. You can eat his food, sis. I can't. You already forgot what he did to me yesterday. Lu Lan opened her mouth and nothing came out. She was stuck between 2 impossible feelings, devastation for what happened to Xiaomei, and the undeniable fact that a bowl of chicken stew was sitting right there getting cold. I put my chopsticks down. Say that again. Xiaomei straightened her spine and puffed out her chest like a tiny general making a last stand. I said I won't eat. I'll starve to death before I take 1 bite from you. I nodded. Perfect. Then I picked up her bowl and dumped the chicken, but into Xiao Ling's serving. Here, kid, bonus round. Xiao Ling didn't question the gift from heaven. She clapped her little hands and dove in. Philosophical questions about the morality of food redistribution are above the pay grade of a 4-year-old. Xiaomei froze. I could see the exact moment her brain caught up with reality. She'd expected me to beg, maybe insist, maybe get angry and force her to eat. That's how it works in her head. The man who was so aggressive yesterday would surely not accept a refusal today, right? Wrong. I picked up my corn cake and bit into it with a crunch that echoed off the walls. Let me make something crystal clear. In this house, I am the sky. The food I bring doesn't fall from clouds. If you don't want to eat, the door is right there. Go outside and drink the northwest wind for dinner. Lulan panicked. Fengzi, please don't take it personally. She just needs time to come around. Can you give her another bowl? Please. I gave her one look. Say one more word, and I'll take back the chicken, but from your kid. Lulan's mouth sealed shut like it was welded closed. Her daughter's meal was sacred territory, and she wasn't risking a single bone fragment of it. She tried eating only half her portion, sneaky woman, planning to save the rest for Xiaomei later. I saw it immediately, walked over, and ate her leftovers right in front of her face. She stared at me, opened her mouth, got as far as, you, and then met my eyes and swallowed whatever she was going to say along with her dignity. I went back to my meal, chewed the bones extra loud on purpose. Crunch, crunch, slurped the soup like I was trying to vacuum the bowl clean. Made enough noise to host a cooking show. Xiaomei sat in her corner, eyes turning red. She was hungry, devastatingly hungry. The smell of chicken stew was basically torturing her nostrils. Her stomach had completely abandoned her pride and was staging a full rebellion. Grrrrrrrrrrr. The growl was so loud it rattled the silence like a drum. I paused mid-bite, turned toward the window, and said with perfect deadpan, Huh? Thunder during a snowstorm? That's unusual. Xiaomei wanted to dissolve into the floor. She buried her face in her knees and cried silently. Tears dripping, shoulders shaking. The full package. Did I feel bad? Sure, a tiny bit. But I learned something important about stubborn people. You don't reward tantrums with attention. You starve them out. Literally. Skip a few meals, and suddenly pride becomes a lot less appetizing than chicken soup. I finished eating, let out the most satisfying belch of my entire existence, and leaned back. 2 days since I woke up in this frozen nightmare, and I'd finally had a proper full meal. Life was looking up. Slightly. From a very low starting point. Lulan collected the dishes and froze when she picked up my bowl. There was still half a serving of soup and meat at the bottom. Left on purpose. She looked at me. I looked away. She carried it to the kitchen without a word. The sky went black by 5. Winter nights in the north arrive like someone flipping a light switch. The stove died down. Cold air started sneaking back through every crack. I sat on the warm end of the bed and glanced toward the cold end. Xiaomei was still there. No food in her stomach. No heat in her body. Shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. That thin cotton outfit was about as useful as wrapping yourself in good intentions. She was curled into a ball, shoulders twitching, obviously still crying. Stubborn girl. Stupid, proud, starving, freezing, stubborn girl. Full belly, warm bed. Life was almost tolerable. Almost. The problem was the second half of the night, when the fire dies and the temperature drops like a rock off a cliff. A man needs insulation. Human insulation, preferably. I glanced sideways. Xiaomei was curled up half a meter away from me, shivering like a leaf in a hurricane, stubborn as a donkey on a frozen road. She hadn't eaten a single bite at dinner. Her stomach was performing a full symphony orchestra, growling, rumbling, gurgling, an entire concert of regret echoing through the silent room. You raising frogs in there? That belly's louder than you are. Get lost. She hissed it through clenched teeth without turning around. She scooted further away from me, pressing her back against sleeping Xiaoling. Nowhere left to run. Lulan was on the other side of the kid. The bed was a 4-person sardine can and Xiaomei had officially run out of real estate. I reached over, grabbed her arm, and dragged her back. She yelped, tried to fight, but a woman who hasn't eaten all day fighting a man who just demolished 2 chicken legs is not a fair matchup. It's not even in the same sport. She crashed into my chest like a shopping bag being pulled off a shelf. No resistance, no traction, just gravity and surrender. Let go of me. Her palms pushed against my chest with all the force of a gentle breeze. I wrapped my arms around her waist and locked her in place. My hands settled on her lower back, and I couldn't help noticing. This girl was skinny. No fat anywhere. Waist so small my hand practically went all the way around. But the engineering in other departments was surprisingly solid for someone running on 0 calories. She squirmed. She twisted. She called me every farm animal in the dictionary. All in a frantic whisper, because God forbid she wake up her sister-in-law 3 feet away. You're disgusting. Don't touch me. I'm touching my own woman. Perfectly normal. Who is your woman? Have you no shame? You slept with me. Unless you're planning to be someone else's woman now? Dead silence. I'd hit the logic button she couldn't argue with. In 1960 rural China, that math was final. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The calculator in her brain was returning an answer she didn't want to see. She tried to bite my shoulder. Actual teeth heading for actual flesh. I caught her jaw with one hand. Easy there, wolf girl. You're eating my food, sleeping in my house, and now you want to eat me too? Pick a lane. I didn't eat your food. Your sister-in-law and niece did. Or are they not your family anymore? Also, keep squirming, and I'll find something more productive to do with this energy. I've got free time. She turned to stone. Every single muscle locked. That threat worked better than any lock or chain ever invented. She knew I wasn't bluffing. My track record of doing exactly what I said was unfortunately perfect. Good girl. Stay still. I'm warm. You're cold. This is basic thermodynamics. Nothing personal. I adjusted her into a comfortable position, her back against my chest, my arm draped over her, hand resting on her shoulder. Totally innocent. Mostly. She lay there rigid as a wooden board, making tiny crying sounds into the dark, tears soaking through my shirt. Normally crying annoys me, but these were quiet tears. Background noise. Almost peaceful, like rain on a roof. I could work with that. On the other side of the sleeping child, Lu Lan was wide awake. I knew it. She knew I knew it. The bed transmitted every sound like a telephone wire. Every whisper, every rustle of fabric, every sniffle. The woman was lying there with the blanket pulled over her ears, pretending to be asleep so hard she deserved an acting award. 3 years without a husband. 3 years of solo survival, raising a kid, protecting her sister-in-law, scraping by on nothing. She'd forgotten what a man's presence even felt like. And now there was one on her bed, young, strong, loud, doing exactly what men do. Right there, separated from her by one sleeping 4-year-old and about 3 feet of heated brick. She heard everything. Xueme's muffled protests, my casual threats, the sound of 2 bodies settling against each other. Her heart was pounding so loud she was probably afraid I could hear it too. Part of her felt guilty for not intervening. Part of her couldn't afford to. That pheasant I'd brought home had demolished whatever was left of her resistance. A man who hunts in a famine is not a man you argue with. He's a man you keep happy, keep fed, keep close. Because the alternative is minus 30 degrees and an empty kitchen. She buried her face in the pillow and tried to think about literally anything else. It wasn't working. Her brain kept circling back to the same uncomfortable thoughts like a dog chasing its own tail. Meanwhile, Xueme had finally stopped fighting physics. Her body slowly unclenched, muscle by muscle, like ice melting in slow motion. Exhaustion plus warmth plus an empty stomach equals surrender, no matter how much pride you started with. She was still crying, but quieter now. More like leaking than sobbing. By morning she was wrapped around me like a koala on a eucalyptus tree. Face smooshed against my chest, hands clutching my shirt, legs tangled with mine. Sleeping like an absolute angel. 0% of last night's warrior princess remained. Just a tired, hungry girl holding onto the warmest thing in the room. I sighed, looked down at this human octopus attached to my torso and thought, brother, you are suffering. This living arrangement needs an upgrade immediately. Separate rooms, walls, doors that lock. A man has needs that a crowded family bed cannot accommodate. I extracted myself carefully, grabbed the hunting bow from the corner, slung the quiver over my shoulder, and pocketed the last remaining corn bun. Mountain rations. Can't hunt on empty. Pushed open the door and stepped into the gray morning light. Snow had stopped. Wind had quit. The world was white and still and brutally cold. Behind me, 3 women slept in my bed. One angry, one conflicted, one too young to understand any of it. All 3 completely dependent on whatever I dragged home today. No pressure. I walked out the door at dawn and left behind 3 sleeping women and 0 regrets. What happened next inside my house? I didn't see it, but I know these women well enough by now to reconstruct the whole scene in my head with perfect accuracy. The second my boots hit the snow outside, Lulan was already up, reheating that half bowl of soup I, accidentally, left behind. Look, I ate an entire pheasant down to the bone marrow. I chew bones for fun. The idea that I couldn't finish a few scraps of meat is laughable. I left that bowl on purpose. But if anyone asks, I was full. A man has an image to maintain. Lulan carried that warm soup to the bed where Xuemei was still cosplaying as a stubborn burrito. The smell of reheated chicken broth filled the room, and Xuemei's stomach immediately betrayed her entire political position with a thunderous growl. I won't eat his food, she declared from inside the blanket fort of pride. Lulan hit her with the big sister speech. The face can't fill your belly speech. The look at Xiaoling. She ate meat yesterday, and today she has color in her cheeks again speech. The you already gave him everything. So starving yourself to death is just letting him win speech. And the grand finale. If you die, he'll just find another girl to warm his bed by tomorrow night. And then what was the point of any of it? That last one was a cruise missile aimed directly at Xuemei's logic center. Because it was completely, brutally, mathematically true. If she starved herself out of spite, she'd be dead, and I'd be inconvenienced for about one afternoon. Not exactly the devastating revenge she was imagining. Lulan even threw herself on the grenade. If he bothers you again, I'll take your place. That cracked Xuemei wide open. She burst into tears, begged her sister-in-law not to sacrifice herself. And somewhere between the crying and the arguing, her hands found the soup bowl and her mouth found the soup. She drank it like someone trying to inhale a river, tears falling into the broth, crying and slurping simultaneously. Licked the bowl so clean it didn't need washing. Every drop of oil, every crumb of meat, gone. Then she set the bowl down, hated me, hated herself, and hated the fact that one bowl of leftover soup had completely demolished her hunger strike in under 4 minutes. Stubbornness has a shelf life. Turns out it's about 18 hours. Meanwhile, I was up on the mountain chewing on a corn bun that tasted like compressed sawdust. The forest air was so cold it felt like swallowing tiny knives with every breath. But I wasn't here for the atmosphere. I was here for inventory. First discovery, rabbit tracks. 2 big dots in front, 2 small dots behind. Classic bunny pattern, leading straight to a bush that probably had a burrow behind it. My hunter brain lit up like a bonfire. Rabbits meant real meat, multiple pounds per catch. But rabbits are nocturnal, and catching one with a bow in daylight was basically impossible. I needed wire snares. Filed the location in my mental GPS and moved on. Half an hour deeper into the forest, I spotted my real target. A female pheasant, plain brown, no glamorous feathers like yesterday's handsome boyfriend, probably on her 3rd or 4th marriage based on her world-weary energy. She was digging in the snow for seeds, completely oblivious, weighing maybe just under a gene. Not impressive, but meat is meat and beggars don't review restaurants. 1 arrow, straight through the neck. She didn't even get a goodbye squawk out. Just flopped over like someone unplugged her. 2 flaps and done. I was getting good at this. Yesterday was luck. Today was skill. Tomorrow would be routine. Plucked her on the walk down, feathers flying behind me like I was a one-man pillow fight. Gutted her with my knife. Kept everything except the parts that were literally poop. The chicken, but I saved special. Xiaoling had developed a genuine emotional attachment to chicken butts, and I wasn't about to disappoint my youngest fan. Grabbed firewood on the way back. Then got lucky again. Found a frozen sand grouse just lying on the ground, stiff as a hockey puck. Free protein. Thank you, nature. Very generous. 5 stars. Near the village entrance, I passed a yard where a kid was playing with a homemade slingshot. Wooden fork handle, rubber band cut from an old tire. He nailed a tree branch from 20 feet and cheered like he'd won the Olympics. My brain sparked. A bow is great for big targets at distance, but for small fast stuff, sparrows, squirrels, anything that moves in a blur, a slingshot is king. Lighter, faster, more flexible. I needed one. I strolled into the yard like I owned it. The kid saw me and his face went from pure joy to pure horror in about half a second. Chin the crazy? What do you want? Apparently my reputation with the village children was somewhere between the boogeyman and an actual wolf. His mother had specifically warned him never to speak to me. Fantastic. My personal brand was thriving. I crouched down and tried to look friendly. Based on his expression, my friendly face was somehow more terrifying than my normal face. Need to work on that. Relax, kid. I just want to talk about your slingshot. Technical discussion. Engineer to engineer, he clutched that slingshot like I was trying to steal his soul. Which, to be fair, was not entirely inaccurate. I pulled out the frozen sand grouse and dangled it in front of his face. The kid's eyes went wide as dinner plates. His throat bobbed. In a village where nobody had eaten meat in weeks, I was waving a frozen bird at a hungry child. Know what this is? Sand. Grouse? The negotiation had begun. And brother, I don't lose negotiations. I got back to the house around 4, but before knocking, I did something smart. Chopped the pheasant in half and buried one piece in the yard under the snow. Nature's freezer. Free storage. Half now, half later. Because a man who eats everything today has nothing tomorrow, and I was done being that guy. Knocked on the door. Lulan opened it so fast she must have been standing there waiting like a puppy hearing its owner's car. Her eyes went straight to my hands, and her brain crashed again. Left hand, half a frozen pheasant. Right hand, a brand new slingshot made from polished jujube wood with rubber bands cut from a tractor tire's inner tube. Another pheasant. Her voice was shaking like she'd just witnessed a miracle for the 3rd day running. I shoved the bird into her arms. Cook it. She nearly fumbled it, frozen solid, heavier than expected. Then her curiosity kicked in. Fengzi, why is it only half? Where's the other half? Buried in the yard. Saving it. She accepted that with a little, oh, and then spotted the slingshot on the table. A slingshot? You traded meat for a children's toy? Fengzi, these wooden forks grow on every tree on the mountain. That sand grouse was real food. Xiaomei was listening from the corner, and I could practically feel her judging me too. Both women had reached the same conclusion. Their provider had lost his mind and traded actual protein for a stick with rubber bands. I looked at their chests, then their hair, and delivered my verdict. Big chest, no brain. Long hair, short wisdom. Before they could explode, I picked up the slingshot and snapped the rubber band once. Crack. That sound shut them both up. This rubber is from a tractor inner tube, elastic enough to launch a stone through a plank. The fork is aged jujube wood, hardest timber in the village, sanded smooth. The pouch is genuine cowhide. You can't find this stuff just lying around on any mountain. But explaining equipment quality to people who think a slingshot is a toy is like teaching a fish to climb trees, so never mind. Lulan went quiet and actually started thinking. A slingshot fits inside a coat pocket. Invisible. Nobody sees you carrying it. And with my aim, I'd been dropping pheasants at 30 meters with arrows. Sparrows and small game would be child's play with this thing. The light bulb finally went on behind her eyes. I'll go cook the chicken right now. Chop it all into tiny pieces. Meat paste. Add lots of water. Half a bird needs to stretch. She nodded and bounced off to the kitchen, genuinely happy. Amazing what 3 consecutive days of meat does to a person's attitude toward their local scumbag. 10 minutes later, chop, chop, chop. Lulan had reduced that half pheasant to dust. Bones and all, pulverized. She dumped everything into boiling water, and the smell started creeping through the house. Not exactly gourmet, but to 4 starving people, it was heaven leaking through the walls. Xiaomei's stomach staged another public protest. A long, loud, embarrassing growl that filled the entire room. She slapped her hands over her belly, face turning the color of a ripe tomato. Going on hunger strike again tonight? I asked without looking at her. She turned away, didn't answer. But here's the thing, her silence was different today. Yesterday's silence was defiant. Today's silence was defeated. That bowl of leftover soup this morning had cracked her armor in half, and she knew tonight's chicken would finish the job. When Lulan brought the big clay pot to the table, I did my usual routine. My bowl first, biggest portions, best pieces. Then Xiao Ling, who clapped her little hands and immediately went face first into the broth like a tiny, adorable vacuum cleaner. Then Lulan, generous helping, grateful nodding, the usual. Last bowl, chicken soup with 2 bony pieces of meat. Slid it across the table toward Xiaomei. She looked at it, steam rising, smelling incredible. No angry speech. No dramatic refusal. No, I'd rather die, declaration. She picked up the bowl and took a sip. Quiet. Small. Almost shy about it. Like she was hoping nobody would notice her entire rebellion had just ended without a single word of surrender. She ate slowly, savoring every tiny shred of flavor, eyes down, pride officially dissolved in chicken broth. I ate my portion loud and crunchy as usual. I'd made bone chewing my signature dining style at this point, and watched her from the corner of my eye. The stubborn princess had finally bent the knee. Not to me, really. To reality. To the basic biological fact that humans need food and pride has zero nutritional value. After dinner, we sat in comfortable silence. Lulan cleaned up. Xiao Ling grabbed my new slingshot and started playing with it on the bed, pulling the rubber band with her tiny fingers and giggling. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Not much meat tonight, but the extra water filled the gaps. Belly was satisfied enough. Xiaomei sat in her corner, hands on her stomach, feeling full for the first time in what was probably days. And then she did something she thought I didn't notice. She peeked at me. A quick glance while my eyes were closed. I felt it though. I always feel it. Something was shifting behind those angry eyes. The hatred was still there, simmering. The humiliation hadn't evaporated. But underneath all of it, growing like a weed through concrete, was a new feeling she didn't want to name. The terrifying realization that without me, she and her family would be dead already. That this crude, vulgar, shameless man was the only reason any of them were still breathing. She was starting to be afraid of something worse than my presence, my absence. Lights out. Same sleeping arrangement. Me on the outside, Xiaomei next to me, Lulan holding Xiao Ling against the wall. The wind picked up outside, rattling the window paper, dropping the temperature 1 degree at a time. I lay there wide awake. Full stomach, young body, blood running hot. Meat does that to a man. Fills you with energy that has nowhere to go in a dark room on a cold night. A fire burning with no fireplace. I stared at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow. More hunting, more food, more survival. And eventually, definitely, absolutely, non-negotiably, finding a second room. Because this 4-person bed situation was testing limits that had nothing to do with patience and everything to do with biology. Night fell, and I did what any reasonable man with a full stomach and a warm bed would do. I grabbed my woman. One arm around the waist, one smooth pull, and Xiaomei crashed into my chest like a rag doll with opinions. She let out half a yelp before slapping her own hand over her mouth. Couldn't let the sister-in-law hear, you see. Reputation management in a one-room house is a full-time job. What are you doing? She whispered in full panic mode. Sleeping. I said it like she'd asked me what color the sky was. She pushed against my chest with both hands. Might as well have been pushing against a mountain with chopsticks. My sister-in-law is right there. She's asleep. She just laid down. There's no way she's. Keep wiggling and I'll upgrade the program. I didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. She felt the implication loud and clear. Her entire body went stiff as a frozen plank. Mission accomplished. Good girl. I pulled her closer. Tonight was different. She'd actually eaten dinner, so her body had warmth in it for the first time. Holding her was like holding a person instead of a bag of ice cubes. Major upgrade. 5 stars. Would hold again. She tried one last verbal attack. You're a monster. A monster who feeds you. Now hold still and let me enjoy my investment. No free lunches in this world. It was one bowl of soup. One bowl of soup could buy me a brand new girl out there. You know that, right? She went quiet. Because she did know. In a famine winter, women traded everything for a single meal. A bowl of chicken soup was practically a dowry. I wasn't being cruel. I was being accurate. 2 different things. She covered her mouth. Might have been crying. Might have been something else. Hard to tell in the dark, and frankly, I wasn't taking questions. Lulan, of course, was wide awake on the other side. That woman hadn't slept a single honest minute since I'd moved into this bed. She was lying there with the blanket pulled up to her eyebrows, face burning hot enough to melt snow, listening to every single whispered word like her ears were satellite dishes. She heard it all. Every argument, every threat, every suspicious rustle of fabric. The poor woman was simultaneously horrified, sympathetic, and, based on how hard she was clutching that blanket, experiencing feelings she absolutely did not want to examine. 3 years without a husband will do that. She hugged Xiaoling tighter and probably prayed to every ancestor she could remember for the strength to survive sharing a bed with the village's most shameless man. Xiaomei's resistance melted gradually. Her stiff arms softened. Her hands, which had been pushing me away, somehow ended up gripping the front of my shirt. Funny how that works. The mouth says, get away from me, while the fingers say, please don't move. We whispered back and forth for a while. Actual conversation this time, not just her cursing and me being magnificent. Quiet voices in the dark, faces close together, sharing warmth. Almost domestic, if you squinted really hard and ignored the entire backstory. Morning arrived, and I woke up to find Shuame plastered against me like a barnacle on a ship hull, face buried in my neck, breathing slow and peaceful, looking like the most innocent creature on earth. As if last night's, "You're a monster," speech had never happened. Sleeping Shuame and awake Shuame were two completely different women. I preferred the sleeping version. She was significantly less annoying. I lifted my arm deliberately. She jolted awake, saw where she was, who she was wrapped around, and launched herself backward so fast she cracked her spine against the wall. "What are you doing?" Face redder than a chili pepper. "What am I doing? What are you doing?" I sat up and hit her with the reverse card. "Crawling into a man's arms at dawn? Taking advantage of me? I'm the victim here. You. That's last night you. Last night what? You were cold. You scooted over. I generously let you use me as a heater. And this is the thanks I get?" Slander. Her jaw was working overtime, but nothing coherent was coming out. She knew exactly what happened. I knew exactly what happened. But I was rewriting history in real time and doing it with a straight face, which is the most powerful weapon a man can have. Relax. We're basically an old married couple at this point. No need to be so formal about things. You're shameless. Put your pants on. Standing there yelling at me half-dressed. Have you no decency? You. The sound that came out of her throat was pure frustrated rage compressed into a single syllable. I'd never heard a human produce that exact frequency before. Impressive vocal range. I got dressed and walked to the front door. Pushed it open. Wall of white. Snow was falling so thick and fast it looked like the sky was vomiting cotton. The yard was buried knee-deep. The fence had nearly disappeared under drifts. Visibility was about 10 feet before the world just became a white blur. My hunting plans evaporated instantly. Going into the mountains in this was suicide. You'd lose direction in 5 minutes, freeze in 20, and become a very handsome snow-covered corpse that nobody would find until spring. Even I wasn't stupid enough to try that. Lulan appeared behind me with fire tongs in hand, took one look at the blizzard, and her face crumpled with worry. "Fengzi, this snow is crazy. No way you're going out today." I shut the door, sealed us back in. She immediately turned her face away from me, cheeks flushing. After everything she'd overheard last night, making eye contact with me had apparently become physically impossible. The woman couldn't look at me without her face catching fire. So here we were. For people trapped in a tiny house by a blizzard. Limited food supplies. Nowhere to go. Nothing to do. One slingshot, one bow, half a buried pheasant, and whatever scraps of corn flour remained in that sad little bag. Snowed in. With 3 women. One of whom hated me, one of whom was afraid of me, and one of whom was 4 years old and only cared about chicken butts. This was going to be a long day. Blizzard outside, trapped inside, nothing to hunt. A lesser man would have sat around feeling sorry for himself. Me? I started building. I dug through the house and found some dried willow sticks and a ball of hemp rope that looked older than the village itself. Sat down on the edge of the bed, pulled out my knife, and started carving. Wood shavings fell on the floor like tiny snowflakes that actually had a purpose. Xiaoling was on the bed playing with my slingshot when she heard the scraping sound. Her little head popped up like a prairie dog smelling food, which, to be fair, was her default setting. She army crawled across the bed until she was right next to me, chin propped on both hands, eyes glued to my knife work. "Uncle Chun, what are you making?" "A thing." "What kind of thing?" "A bird trap." She thought about this for a solid 10 seconds, her 4-year-old brain running at maximum capacity. Then came the question I should have seen from a mile away. "Can you eat it?" I almost cut myself laughing. This kid had exactly one category in her brain, and everything in the world either fell into food or not food yet. The trap was clearly in the not food yet column, and she needed clarification. You can't eat the trap, but it catches things you can eat. Her eyes went supernova. "What kind of things?" "Sparrows. Maybe a sand grouse if we're lucky." I carved a notch into a stick with one clean stroke. You scatter some corn bits on the snow, prop this frame up with a little stick, tie a long string to the stick, and hide inside. When the birds walk underneath to eat, you yank the string. The trap drops. Birds caught. Dinner served. I even did the pulling motion with my hand for dramatic effect. Xiaoling gasped like I'd just explained magic. Wow. Uncle Chun, you're so smart. This child was my #1 fan. My only fan, actually. But I'd take it. I tied 4 sticks into a square frame and started weaving rope into a net pattern inside it. Then I made the mistake of describing roasted sparrow. Told her how you pluck the feathers, hold it over a fire, and the skin goes crispy and the fat sizzles, and even the tiny bones crunch apart in your mouth. Her eyes went so wide I could see my reflection in them. Her stomach answered with a growl so loud it sounded like a small dog living inside her belly. She was clinging to my knee now, looking up at me like I was a god who could summon food from thin air. Which, honestly, wasn't too far from the truth lately. Then Xiaomei ruined everything. She'd been sitting in the far corner pretending to mend clothes while actually monitoring the situation like a paranoid security guard. The second she saw Xiao Ling cuddling up to my leg with worship in her eyes, something inside her snapped. She lunged across the bed, grabbed the kid's arm, and yanked her away from me like I was radioactive. Xiaoling, come here. The poor kid stumbled and almost face-planted. Auntie, what did I do? Don't bother him. Xiaomei pulled Xiaoling behind her back and stared at me like I was trying to recruit her niece into a criminal organization. I stopped carving and gave her my best amused look. What's the problem? I'm teaching the kid survival skills, and you're upset? She doesn't need your teaching. Cool. When I catch sparrows after the snow stops, you don't eat any. She clenched her jaw so hard I heard her teeth creak. Then she leaned down to Xiaoling's ear and whispered, remember what Annie says, stay away from him. He's a bad man. Xiaoling looked at Xiaomei. Looked at me. Looked back at Xiaomei. Her tiny brain processed this contradiction for exactly 2 seconds before delivering the most devastating counterargument in the history of rhetoric. But Uncle Chun brings meat. Bad people don't bring meat. Xiaomei's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She'd been logically dismantled by a 4-year-old using the simplest moral framework in existence. Food equals good. No food equals bad. And by that metric, I was the greatest hero this household had ever seen. You don't understand, Xiaomei sputtered. Remember how he scared you yesterday? Xiaoling shrank a little. Fear was still in the database, filed right next to chicken butts and warm bed. But it was clearly losing ground to the guy who feeds me every day. I went back to tying knots on my trap. Xiaomei, your face is thicker than a city wall. You eat my food, sleep in my house, and then tell a child I'm the villain? At least have the honesty to be a grateful hypocrite instead of a loud one. Direct hit. She turned the color of a boiled beet and retreated to the far corner with Xiaoling in tow. Couldn't find a single word to fire back. What could she say? Yes, I eat your pheasant every night, but I do it angrily. That's not the argument winner she thinks it is. I finished weaving the net and tested the trigger mechanism. Clean release, fast drop. Any sparrow dumb enough to walk under this thing was going straight from freedom to my stomach in about 3 seconds flat. Lulan came back inside from shoveling snow in the yard. She stood in the doorway, slightly out of breath, and watched me work. I didn't look up, but I could feel her eyes on my hands, my face, my shoulders. The way women look at a man when they're recalculating something important in their heads. 3 days ago, she'd called me an animal. 2 days ago, I was that scumbag. Yesterday, I became Fengzi. And today? Today, she was standing in the doorway watching me carve a bird trap with a knife, snow melting in her hair, thinking thoughts she'd never admit out loud. Trapped in a blizzard with no food supply, 3 mouths depending on me, and I was sitting there calmly building solutions out of sticks and string while the world froze outside. I could practically hear her internal monologue shifting gears. Something along the lines of, this man might be the worst human being I've ever met, but he's also the reason we're still alive. And he looks kind of good holding that knife. Women, feed them 3 days in a row and suddenly the devil starts looking handsome. While I sat on the bed weaving my bird trap like a productive member of society, the 2 women snuck off to the kitchen for what they clearly thought was a private conversation. Here's the thing about dirt houses with thin walls. They're basically loudspeakers with a roof. I heard every single word. Every single one. It started with Xiaomei stomping out there all fired up, complaining to Lulan about how I was corrupting little Xiaoling. Apparently teaching a child how to catch food during a famine was an act of villainy. The nerve of me, showing a starving kid how to trap sparrows. What kind of monster does that? The kind that keeps everyone alive. That's who. Lu Lan tried to calm her down. He's teaching her useful skills, Xuemei, reasonable woman. Getting more reasonable by the day, actually. The more I fed her, the more sense she made. Funny coincidence. Xuemei wasn't having it. You're taking his side? Then Lu Lan pulled out the big guns, dragged Xuemei into the corner, and started laying down truth bombs so heavy the floor should have cracked. Be honest with yourself. Without him, where would we be right now? Dead. That's where. You ate the chicken soup, didn't you? You ate the meat this morning, didn't you? Remember when we went begging to your uncle's family? They wouldn't even open the door. Chinfong. He kicked down someone else's door and brought meat back for us. This world doesn't run on manners. It runs on people tough enough to take what they need. Silence from Xuemei. The sound of a woman whose argument just got dismantled by her own sister-in-law using nothing but facts. Then Xuemei played her last card, voice cracking. He's still a criminal. He forced me. Lu Lan sighed, the kind of sigh that carries 3 years of widowhood, a starving daughter, and about 14 layers of exhaustion. Forced? Xuemei, if you really didn't want to go in that room, you wouldn't have walked through the door. You knew he was the only one who could save Shaoling, nuclear detonation. Direct hit on the truth bunker. Xuemei burst into tears and accused her sister-in-law of stabbing her in the heart. Which, to be fair, Lu Lan kind of was, but with the surgical precision of someone who loved her too much to let her keep lying to herself. Then things got interesting. Lu Lan said something that made the kitchen go so quiet I could hear snowflakes landing outside. He's actually not that bad. I almost dropped my knife. Did the woman who called me a beast 3 days ago just defend my character? In what universe? What timeline? Had the chicken soup contained some kind of personality-altering herb? Xuemei caught it too. Sis, what did you just say? Lu Lan panicked. Started fumbling with a water gourd, pretending she hadn't just accidentally revealed that her opinion of me had undergone a radical renovation. Nothing. I just meant. He brings food. We need him. Xuemei grabbed her arm and went full interrogation mode. Are you crazy? He ruins my life and you're defending him? Did 2 meals of meat steal your soul? Lu Lan's face must have been glowing like a lantern, because even from the other room I could sense the heat radiating off her embarrassment. She yanked her arm free, and then, in a moment of pure emotional chaos, she said the thing that nobody in that kitchen expected, including herself. If it'll help, I can take your place. Let me be the one who keeps him company. The silence that followed was so thick you could have built furniture out of it. Lu Lan immediately wanted to slap herself. The words had escaped her mouth like prisoners from a jail, unauthorized, unplanned, and impossible to recapture. She spun around and started frantically pretending to scoop water from a bucket, like suddenly hydration was the most urgent task in human history. Xuemei stared at her sister-in-law's back with tears streaming down her face. But beneath the shock, she understood what had just happened. Lu Lan wasn't trying to steal anything. She was trying to protect her. This woman, widowed, starving, responsible for a 4-year-old, was willing to sacrifice her own body so that Xuemei wouldn't have to endure another night of my attention. 3 years alone. 3 years of suffering. And she was volunteering to add more suffering to the pile, just so her little sister-in-law could suffer less. Xuemei grabbed Lu Lan's hands and squeezed hard. Don't you dare. I already gave him what I gave him. It's done. I'm not letting you throw yourself into. If you did that, I could never face my brother's memory again. Lu Lan tried to smile. Didn't quite make it. I'm a widow, Xuemei. As long as nobody finds out, my reputation doesn't matter. As long as you and Shaoling are alive. Xuemei shook her head, wiped her tears, and for the first time since I'd met her, she said something that wasn't a curse or a complaint. I'll try. I'll try to be less difficult with him. Lu Lan squeezed her hands back, looking relieved, but also looking like something else had been locked away in a drawer she wasn't ready to open. Me? I sat on the bed tying knots on my bird trap, pretending I hadn't heard a single syllable of any of it. But inside my head, I was filing away every word like a squirrel storing nuts. 2 women negotiating over who gets to handle me like I was a natural disaster that needed managing. One volunteering as tribute to protect the other, both slowly realizing that the scumbag in the next room was the only reason any of them still had a pulse. I tied the last knot on my trap and held it up. Perfect square. Tight net. Ready for deployment. The trap on the table was for birds. But apparently, I'd already built a much bigger one without even trying. And these two had walked right into it the moment they ate my food, slept on my bed, and started arguing over whose turn it was to keep me warm. Survival is the ultimate leash. And I was holding all three ends. The snow finally quit, and a pathetic sliver of sunlight broke through the clouds like even the sun was embarrassed to show up this late. I stepped outside, spotted some sparrows huddled on the bare elm trees like little feathered idiots who didn't know a predator had just acquired a slingshot, and went to work. First stone, snap, fattest sparrow dropped into the snow like a fuzzy cannonball. The rest panicked and tried to fly. Tried. I reloaded faster than they could flap. Snap, 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 snap. 5 kills. 5 tiny corpses. Each one weighed less than my thumb and was roughly 80% skeleton. But in this economy, sparrow meat was practically Wagyu beef. I tossed them on the kitchen counter in front of Lulan. Pluck, gut roast. Keep everything edible. She stared at the pile of dead birds like I'd just handed her 5 golden eggs. You hit these with the slingshot? In this cold? Fengzi, your aim is inhuman. Obviously. Now stop talking and start cooking. Then the real entertainment began. Xiao Ling heard the commotion and came flying out of the bedroom barefoot, skidding across the cold floor like a tiny, excited penguin. She saw the sparrows and her entire face became one giant smile. Uncle Feng, you got sparrows. I pinched her cheek. Uncle Feng is too formal, kid. She blinked twice, thought for exactly half a second, and then shouted at full volume. Daddy. The room detonated. Lulan practically teleported across the kitchen and clamped her hand over the kid's mouth so fast it created a small breeze. SHHHH. What are you saying? Call him Uncle Chun. MMPH MMPH MMPH. Xiaoling protested behind the hand muzzle. Xiaomei glared at me from the bed like I'd personally coached the child to say it. I hadn't, but I wasn't mad about it either. The kid had instincts. Wrong instincts, but enthusiastic ones. After the crisis was contained, Xiaoling settled on Uncle Feng and resumed worshipping me at maximum volume. Uncle Feng is the best. Uncle Feng catches big pheasants and tiny sparrows. She was orbiting my legs like a tiny satellite made of loyalty and hunger. This was too much for Xiaomei. Watching her niece, the child she'd sacrificed everything for, cheerfully defecting to the enemy camp, was her personal nightmare playing out in real time. Xiaoling, come here. Now. The kid trudged over reluctantly. Xiaomei pulled her into the corner and launched into a whispered lecture about how I was a bad man, a liar, a villain, and absolutely not to be trusted, regardless of how many birds I killed. Xiaoling listened politely. Then she dropped her counter-argument with the calm confidence of a tiny lawyer who'd already won the case. Uncle's family wouldn't even open the door for us. Uncle Feng gives us pheasant and sparrows. Uncle Feng is good. Uncle's family is bad. The logic was so clean, so airtight, so devastatingly simple that Xiaomei's brain temporarily stopped accepting inputs. She'd been out-argued by a 4-year-old using a moral framework built entirely on who feeds me. And by that framework, I was basically a saint with a slingshot. You don't understand. Don't eat anything he gives you. That's when I stepped in. Why can't she eat? I caught those birds with my own hands. I decide who eats. You want to control what the kid puts in her mouth now? What's next? You going to regulate breathing too? Xiaomei threw a shirt at my face. I swatted it away like a fly. She stood there trembling with rage, out of ammunition, out of arguments, completely outflanked by a man she hated and a niece who'd switched teams for the price of some roasted sparrow. You think food buys loyalty? She yelled. Your mouth says no, but every night you're curled up in my arms like a kitten. Words are cheap, sweetheart. Bodies are honest. You're shameless. Music to my ears. The angrier she got, the more fun I had. Some women you charm with flowers. This one, you tame with pheasants and facts. And honestly, I hoped she'd never completely stop fighting. The fire in her eyes was the most entertaining thing in this frozen wasteland. Stay feisty, princess. I'm enjoying every second of it. Lulan threaded 5 naked sparrows onto a wire and laid them over the hot coals like tiny kebabs at the world's saddest barbecue. The second that fat hit the heat, the smell that came off those birds was absolutely criminal. Yesterday's chicken soup? Amateur hour. This was concentrated, bone-deep, crispy skin, dripping oil perfection. 5 sparrows the size of my fist, and they smelled better than anything I'd eaten in either of my lives. Lulan was already campaigning for Wife of the Year. Fengzi, with your skills we'll never go hungry. This is landlord-level dining. Rich people don't eat this good. She brought the platter in. 5 golden, sizzling, oil-dripping little beauties lined up on a clay plate. Xiao Ling was vibrating at a frequency only dogs could hear. I handed her one, and she shoved the entire bird into her mouth like a snake unhinging its jaw. Bones crunching, oil running down her chin, making sounds that belonged in a nature documentary about feeding time at the zoo. I gave Lulan one. She did her usual, "Oh no, I couldn't. You need the energy dance." I stuffed it into her hand and told her to stop performing. She blushed, accepted, and nibbled it with the delicate happiness of someone who'd forgotten food could taste like joy. 3 left. I picked one up and looked at Xiaomei. She was in her corner doing her absolute favorite activity, pretending to stare out the window while her throat bobbed up and down like a fishing float in a storm. The woman was swallowing her own saliva so aggressively, it was practically cardio. I walked that sparrow right up to her face, held it an inch from her nose. The oil was still bubbling on the skin. The smell was inescapable. Her nostrils flared involuntarily. Her stomach fired off a growl so loud it sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. "Take it away," she hissed through clenched teeth. I pushed it closer, nearly touching her lips now. "Sure about that?" She pressed her back flat against the wall like she was trying to phase through it into another dimension. Her eyes were watering. Her stomach was screaming. Every cell in her body was staging a mutiny against her brain's orders. I said no. I pulled the sparrow back, held it under my own nose, and put on a performance. Sniffed it loudly, smacked my lips, rolled my eyes in exaggerated pleasure. "Oh man, you smell this? The fat is in the bones. Better than yesterday's pheasant. Better than anything. Landlords in their mansions never tasted anything this fresh. And here I am, a humble village deadbeat, eating like royalty in a dirt house." Her stomach answered with another earthquake rumble. So loud Lulan heard it from the kitchen. So loud Xiao Ling paused mid-chew and looked around for the source. I laughed. Full volume. "No mercy. Your belly sounds like a thunderstorm, but your mouth is still playing tough guy. Xiaomei, you are the most stubborn idiot I have ever met, and I've met myself. Mind your own business. I'll starve before I eat your garbage." "Perfect." I nodded. "Then tonight you don't sleep. At all. I'll make sure of it personally." Her face went through 17 shades of red. "You call that reasonable? I am the reason. Open your mouth." She turned away. I grabbed her chin and turned her face back toward me. "Not gentle. My fingers are not built for gentle." She winced, tried to jerk free, failed completely. "Open your mouth. 1 bite, and I leave you alone tonight. That's the deal. Or we can do this the hard way, and I promise you the hard way involves a lot less sleeping and a lot more of what happened last night. Your call." "Shut up. My sister-in-law is right there. So, I'm feeding my own woman. Who's going to arrest me?" She stared at that sparrow. Golden crispy skin. Little drops of oil catching the light. Her stomach had given up on growling and was now just screaming continuously like a broken alarm. Her resistance crumbled. I watched it happen in slow motion. The wall behind her eyes cracking, brick by brick, washed away by hunger and exhaustion and the undeniable fact that this sparrow smelled like the best thing that had ever existed. Her internal monologue was practically audible. "Fine. 1 bite. He owes me anyway. My entire body is his fault. Eating one stupid bird is the least he can do. This isn't surrender. This is collecting a debt. I'm not giving in. I'm taking what's mine." Her lips parted. Slowly, teeth approaching the crispy skin, eyes half closed in premature surrender. She leaned forward, mouth open, ready to accept her delicious defeat. And I yanked the sparrow away and popped it into my own mouth. Crunch. Bone, meat, skin, fat, all demolished in one magnificent bite. I chewed with my mouth open, looking directly into her eyes, grinning like the devil at a talent show. She froze, mouth still open, body still leaning forward, brain buffering, the blue screen of death behind her eyeballs. For a solid 3 seconds, Xiaomei existed in a state of pure, unprocessed shock. She'd finally lowered her walls, opened her mouth, accepted her fate, surrendered her pride on the altar of hunger. And I ate it right in front of her face. "Wanted that, huh?" I said through a mouthful of sparrow, grinning so wide my face hurt. Too slow. The look she gave me could have peeled paint off walls, could have frozen boiling water, could have made wolves turn around and run home to their mothers. It was the purest expression of concentrated feminine fury I had ever witnessed in any lifetime, and it was aimed at me like a cannon loaded with every insult ever invented. I picked up the last 2 sparrows, crunched through them slowly, savoring every bite while maintaining aggressive eye contact. Was I going to give her one originally? Absolutely. Was watching her suffer more entertaining than being generous? Without question. Would she eventually eat from my hand willingly? Just a matter of time. Breaking a wild horse isn't about force. It's about patience, timing, and occasionally eating the carrot yourself just to remind them who's in charge. Xiaomei finally figured out I'd played her like a fiddle. She'd opened her mouth, leaned in, mentally surrendered, and I ate the sparrow right off my own fingers. The explosion that followed was magnificent. Screaming, punching, crying, the whole fireworks show. I blocked her fists without looking and told her to save her energy for bedtime. She buried her face in her knees and sobbed. Called me every name in the book. I sat there licking grease off my fingers feeling like a king. Last sparrow on the plate. I handed it to Lu Lan. She tried refusing. You need the calories, Fengzi, but I shoved it into her hands. Now here's the thing. I knew Lu Lan was smart enough to figure out the play. 5 sparrows. I gave Xiao Ling 1, Lu Lan 1, ate 2 myself, and, accidentally, left 1. A man who chews bones for sport doesn't leave leftovers by mistake. She looked at the sparrow, looked at Xiaomei crying in the corner, and I watched the light bulb click on behind her eyes. She got it. This bird was making a detour to Xiaomei's stomach via the sister-in-law express. My hands stay clean, Xiaomei's pride gets a backdoor exit, everybody eats. Then someone knocked on my door. In the middle of a blizzard. In a village where nobody visits me voluntarily. Suspicious. I opened up and there stood Li Jitsai, the older brother from the Li family I'd robbed yesterday. Shivering in a garbage coat, hands stuffed in his sleeves, clutching half a shriveled sweet potato like it was a diamond ring. He peeked past me trying to spot Lu Lan. I'm here to see Lanzi. Pet name. Familiar. Flirty. My eyebrow went up so fast it nearly left my face. This clown had been sniffing around Lu Lan for a while apparently. She was a young widow. He was a creep with proximity. Being the older brother-in-law gave him excuses to hover. Lu Lan had always dodged him. But now, with everyone starving and desperate, this genius thought half a dried-up sweet potato was enough to buy his way into her good graces. On a night when I'd just fed her roasted sparrow, he spotted Lu Lan by the stove and completely ignored me. Me, the guy who'd turned his brother into a floor decoration yesterday, and started sweet-talking her through my doorway. Lanzi, I saved this from my own meals. My parents don't even know. I've been worrying about you. Come take it. And tonight I can bring you something else, real subtle, Romeo. The desperation was dripping off him thicker than sparrow grease. Lu Lan's face twisted with disgust. Take your stuff and leave. I don't want it. He kept pushing, kept squeezing forward, kept calling her, Lanzi, like the word itself would unlock her door. I grabbed his collar with one hand and lifted. His feet almost left the ground, dragged him across the yard like a sack of rotten potatoes, and launched him into a snowbank. He ate snow face first, came up sputtering, pointing at me with a shaking finger. What right do you have? She's my brother's widow. I'm bringing her food. I stepped forward. My shadow swallowed him whole. Your family watched these women starve and didn't crack your door open once. Now you show up with half a moldy sweet potato trying to buy what you couldn't earn? You think this is a charity auction? His face went red, then white, then a color that doesn't have a name. I pointed at his nose. Let me make this real simple, so even your brain can process it. Lu Lan is mine now. She eats my food. She sleeps under my roof. Anyone who comes sniffing around her, I break them. Not metaphorically. Literally. I will snap pieces off your body and use them for firewood. Now get out of my yard before I demonstrate. He scrambled backward through the snow like a crab that just discovered religion, tripped over his own feet twice, and disappeared through my gate without looking back. Behind me, Lu Lan stood in the doorway with her mouth hanging open and her heart hammering so loud I could practically hear it from the yard. She'd been called, my woman, in public by a man for the first time in 3 years, and judging by the color of her face, her cardiovascular system was not handling it well. Did I mean it romantically? Strategically? Territorially? Yes, I threw Li Jizai into a snowbank, told him to get lost, and declared to the entire frozen universe that Lu Lan was mine. Was she actually mine? Debatable. Did I care about the technicalities? Not even slightly. What mattered was that every creep in this village now understood the price of sniffing around my front door, and that price was their teeth. Jizai scrambled out of the snow like a wet cat escaping a bathtub, ran through my gate, and muttered some pathetic threat under his breath that he thought I couldn't hear. I heard it, filed it under, problems too small to care about today. Back at his house, he tattled to Daddy like a schoolboy who got his lunch money. Taken. Li Dahuai listened to the whole dramatic retelling, probably with extra seasoning, and responded by doing the smartest thing that family had done all week. Absolutely nothing. You idiot, the old man told his son. Chinfong is a barefoot man who isn't afraid of people wearing shoes. Even brigade leader Zhao won't touch him. You want to pick a fight with a lunatic who has nothing to lose? Over what? A widow you were trying to seduce with half a rotten sweet potato. She's eating pheasant over there. You're offering her garbage produce and expecting gratitude. Jizai sat there turning colors like a broken traffic light. Red, white, red again. His grand romantic gesture had been publicly compared to bringing a plastic ring to a diamond auction, and the comparison was devastatingly accurate. Lu Lan was eating roasted sparrow at my house while he stood in the cold holding a shriveled tuber that even the tuber was embarrassed about. The old man's final order: stay away from Chinfong, survive the winter, stop causing problems. Jizai agreed out loud. His eyes said something different. I'd deal with that later if it became relevant. Meanwhile, back at my place, something far more entertaining was happening. Lu Lan was standing by the stove holding that last sparrow, and her brain was running calculations that had absolutely nothing to do with cooking. My little, she's my woman, performance in the yard had detonated something inside her skull. The woman was blushing so hard she could have heated the house without firewood. 3 years of widowhood. 3 years of being harassed by creeps like Jizai with nobody defending her. And then this crude, loud, shameless man plants himself between her and trouble and announces ownership like he's staking a flag on the moon. Was it romantic? Absolutely not. Was it the most protected she'd felt since her husband died? Apparently yes, because her heartbeat was doing things that concerned me from across the room. I caught her staring at me when I walked back in. She looked away so fast, she almost gave herself whiplash. I pretended not to notice because acknowledging it would have been awkward for both of us, and I had more important things to handle, like the crying woman in the other room. Xuemei was still sobbing over the sparrow incident. I walked in and delivered my standard motivational speech. Stop crying. I'm not dead yet. Save those tears for my funeral. Now get off the bed and go help cook dinner. The production team's donkey works harder than you. She glared at me with enough hatred to melt steel, opened her mouth to fight back, and then, miracle of miracles, closed it again. Got off the bed, walked to the kitchen, without a single curse word. Progress doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks like a woman who hates your guts, but has finally run out of energy to express it verbally. Out in the kitchen, Lu Lan saw Xuemei's red eyes and immediately pulled her into the corner. She pressed the last golden sparrow into Xuemei's hand, the one-eyed, given to Lu Lan, which both of us knew was always meant for Xuemei. The sister-in-law delivery system, working exactly as designed. Xuemei tried to refuse. Of course she did. The woman would refuse oxygen if she thought I'd supplied it. But Lu Lan hit her with the truth. He left this one on purpose. His appetite could demolish 10 of these without blinking. He kept one back and handed it to me because he knew you'd take it from me, but never from him. The man is terrible with words, but he's not terrible with you. Xuemei stared at that crispy little bird in her palm. Her stomach voted unanimously in favor of eating. Her pride filed a formal objection that was immediately overruled. She ate it in the corner where I couldn't see, which was exactly the point. Everyone saves face. Everyone gets fed. The machine works. This whole setup, the hunting, the cooking, the drama, the crying, the awkward sleeping arrangements, it was starting to feel less like a survival situation and more like a very dysfunctional household finding its rhythm. Lu Lan ran the kitchen and managed Xuemei's emotions. Xuemei fought me publicly and surrendered privately. Xiao Ling provided comic relief and unconditional loyalty for the price of 1 chicken, but per day. And I did what I did best. Brought home food, made enemies, broke things, and somehow kept 4 people alive through sheer stubbornness and a stolen bow. Was it elegant? No. Was it sustainable? Barely. Was it better than being dead in a snowbank? Significantly. The funny part is, I'd accidentally built exactly what every man in this village dreamed about, a house. With 2 women cooking for me, a kid who called me daddy, a full stomach, and a reputation scary enough that people crossed the street when they saw me coming. All it cost me was my dignity, my morals, and any chance of being remembered as a good person. Fair trade. 6:30 in the morning, and I woke up in a warm cocoon of blankets and bad decisions. Shuame jolted awake next to me, immediately furious, face going red like someone turned on a heat lamp inside her skull. What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? This is normal couple behavior. Is this illegal now? My sister-in-law is right there. She's sleeping. And honestly, the other night you were way louder and she didn't wake up. So what's the problem? That comment nearly killed her. Her blush traveled from her face down to her neck and probably kept going all the way to her toes. She squirmed and protested and called me every variation of too much that exists in the Chinese language, but her complaints had about as much structural integrity as a sandcastle in a tsunami. I was feeding her, housing her, and keeping her warm. A little morning inconvenience was included in the rent. On the other side of the bed, Lu Lan was awake. Obviously, that woman hadn't achieved genuine sleep since I moved into this bed. She was lying there spooning Xiao Ling, eyes squeezed shut, face on fire, trying desperately to pretend she existed in a different dimension where sound didn't travel through heated brick beds. My "she's my woman" declaration from yesterday was still bouncing around inside her head like a ping-pong ball in a cement mixer. Every whisper from my side of the bed was making things worse for her. Or better, depending on how you looked at it. Mercifully for everyone's sanity, I kept it PG this morning. Got dressed, shoved my feet into those clunky fur-lined boots. Ugly as sin but worth their weight in gold at 30 below, grabbed the bow, the slingshot, and headed for the mountain. Mouths don't feed themselves. An hour of trudging through waist-deep snow brought me to a dense patch of brush where I found exactly what I was looking for. Tracks everywhere, tiny 3-toed prints packed tight together, fresh as this morning's frost. Not pheasant. Too small. These belonged to sand grouse, little half-pound birds that traveled in flocks and had the survival instincts of a potato. I crept in from downwind, moving like a shadow with excellent aim. Peeked over a snow mound and spotted 7 or 8 of them clustered together, scratching through the snow for dead grass seeds, completely unaware they were being auditioned for dinner. Bow stayed on the ground. Slingshot came out. These birds were too small and too close together for arrows. This was precision work. First stone, snap, direct headshot. Bird dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The flock panicked. Wings everywhere. I reloaded so fast my hands blurred. Second stone caught one mid-takeoff, clipped its wing, sent it spiraling into a snowdrift. Third stone nailed another one in the neck while it was trying to gain altitude. 3 for 3 on hits that counted. The survivors vanished into the brush before I could reload again. But 3 birds at roughly 3 ounces each meant almost a full gene of meat. Not bad for 5 minutes of work and a children's toy. I cleaned them on the walk home. Plucking, gutting, the whole routine. Grabbed whatever firewood I could carry. Every stick counted, every twig mattered. Small additions stack up. That's the philosophy of not dying. Coming around the last bend before the village, some idiot stepped into my path and blocked the road. Zhao Yuhua, early 20s. Son of brigade leader Zhao Fuliang. The village's premier spoiled brat and part-time bully. This was the same guy who once caught a neighbor's chicken in his yard, wrung its neck, cooked it, and then yelled at the owner for letting it wander. A real prince among men. He stared at my cloth bag like a dog eyeing a steak. Hey Fengzi, what's in the bag? Open it up. Let me see. I almost admired the audacity. Almost. This kid had spent his whole life riding daddy's coattails, shaking down villagers who were too scared of the brigade leader to push back. He looked at me and saw the same easy target everyone used to see. Village deadbeat. No connections, no power, no backbone. Outdated intelligence. Somebody should update his files. Why would I show you anything? I kept walking. He stepped closer, puffing up like a rooster with a death wish. Leave the bag. You can go, and if I don't, he smirked. You really want me to call the militia on? I didn't wait for him to finish the sentence. I walked straight past him like he was furniture. Didn't slow down, didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge his existence. He might as well have been a snowman with opinions. Hey, stop right. He made the mistake of reaching for my shoulder. One grab, one twist, one throw. Basic physics. His body left the ground, rotated approximately 1.5 times in the air, and planted face first into a snow pile deep enough to swallow him whole. His legs stuck out the top, kicking uselessly. Muffled screaming came from somewhere under the powder. I glanced at the human snow sculpture behind me, shook my head, and kept walking. The village tough guy, the brigade leader's precious baby boy, was currently doing a headstand in a snowbank with nobody around to dig him out. Some people learn from watching. Some people learn from listening. And some people need to be physically inserted into the ground before the lesson sticks. I shifted the bag of dead birds to my other hand and headed home. 3 sand grouse, a bundle of firewood, and 1 humiliated bully. Productive morning. Got home, knocked. Lulan opened up like my personal doorman. I dumped 3 naked sand grouse onto the chopping block. She gasped like I'd pulled diamonds out of a hat. You caught more? Yes, woman. That's what I do. I go outside, things die, I bring them home. It's called being useful. You should try it sometime. Oh wait, you do. You cook. Fair enough. She started washing and chopping while I sat by the fire enjoying the only luxury a man in 1960 can afford, not being outside. Lulan was laying it on thick with the compliments. Fengzi, you're amazing. The old hunters won't even go up the mountain in this weather, but you come back with meat every single time. I leaned back and casually dropped my next promise. Wait till the snow melts a bit. I'll drag a whole wild boar home. Her eyes went wide as soup bowls. A whole boar would mean enough meat to last weeks. She started giggling like a schoolgirl who just got asked to prom by the village quarterback. Then I added, very casually, as long as you all behave, nobody goes hungry. That word, behave, landed on Lulan's brain like a boulder on thin ice. I could literally see the cracks spreading across her face. She stopped stirring, stopped blinking, stopped breathing. Her mind went racing down a road I hadn't even pointed her toward. What does behave mean? Does he mean cooking and cleaning? Or does he mean other things? Is he asking me to? Does he want me to? Sis? The stew ready yet? I had to call her name 3 times before she came back from whatever fantasy planet she'd just visited. She snapped to attention like a soldier caught napping, stammered out a, "Why yes, almost done," and stared at my face with an expression that was 50% terror and 50% something she definitely wasn't ready to discuss out loud. This woman was writing fan fiction about me inside her own head, and I hadn't even done anything. All I said was, behave, 1 word, 5 letters. And she'd already scripted an entire evening in her imagination. The female brain is a terrifying and magnificent machine. Stew got served. I took my bowl first, big portions, as nature intended. Lulan served Xiao Ling and herself. Then she brought a bowl to Xuemei with the standard, drink it while it's hot, delivery. Xuemei's mouth opened. The familiar, I don't want his food, was loading up in the chamber. I could see it forming behind her lips like a bullet about to fire. But then, beautifully, perfectly, her stomach unleashed a growl so loud it echoed off the walls. The sound of biological mutiny. Her body had officially filed a divorce from her pride. Lulan didn't even need to deliver the full speech this time. An abbreviated version did the trick. He risked his life in a frozen mountain to bring this back. Every man in the village is hiding at home. You not eating is slapping his face. Think about Xiao Ling if you won't think about yourself. Xuemei's resistance crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. She reached out with both hands and took the bowl. Slowly, quietly. No dramatic declaration. No tears. No cursing. Just a woman accepting a warm bowl of soup from the hands of the sister-in-law who refused to let her starve to death out of stubbornness. She drank it in tiny sips, savoring every drop. Licked the bowl clean at the end, every speck of meat paste, every smear of oil. Then she did something that nearly knocked me off my seat. She got off the bed, walked to the kitchen, and said, "Sis, I'll wash the dishes." Lulan froze. I froze. Xiao Ling was too busy rubbing her round little belly to freeze. But she would have frozen too if she understood the magnitude of what just happened. Xuemei, the woman who had spent the last 4 days declaring she'd rather die than cooperate with me, was voluntarily doing housework, without being threatened, without being bribed. without a single insult or ultimatum from yours truly. Somewhere in that stubborn skull, a gear had finally turned. Not all the way, not happily, but it turned. She knelt by the wash basin and scrubbed bowls with her head down, and Lulan exhaled a breath she'd been holding since the day we met. Xiao Ling waddled over to me, belly poking out like a little drum, and hit me with her brightest smile. Uncle Foam, I'm full. I messed up her hair. Good. Lulan watched the exchange, and right on schedule, her brain went back to the races. Yesterday Xiao Ling had called me daddy. Yesterday I'd announced Lulan was my woman in front of Li Jitsai. Today I said, behave. Every data point was connecting itself inside her head into a picture she was simultaneously building and afraid to look at. She started fidgeting with her shirt hem. I could practically read the ticker tape scrolling through her brain. If he really wants me, can I say no? Should I say no? Xiaomei cries every night. If I volunteered, Xiaomei could rest. Xiao Ling would be safe. I'm already a widow. My reputation is already in the garbage. At least this garbage man brings home food. She'd basically talked herself into a decision I hadn't even asked her to make. The human capacity for overthinking is genuinely astounding. I said one word. One. And she'd constructed an entire soap opera in her head with costume changes and a soundtrack. I turned and caught her staring at me with cheeks the color of boiled shrimp. Sis, why is your face red? The sound she made was not a word. It was not a sentence. It was the noise a human produces when their soul tries to leave their body through their throat and gets stuck halfway. She spun around so fast her braid whipped the air and suddenly became extremely interested in a spot on the wall that did not exist. I smirked and went back to my soup. Two women under one roof. One finally learning to stop fighting. The other quietly volunteering for duties nobody had assigned. A kid who worshipped me for chicken butts. And me, the village deadbeat, the scumbag, the thief, the bully, sitting on a warm bed with a full stomach, a bow on the wall, and a slingshot in my pocket. For days ago I woke up with nothing. Now I had a household, a hunting operation, a reputation that made grown men cross the street, and two women competing over who got to tolerate me more. Life in 1960 was brutal, frozen, and starving. But from where I was sitting, things were looking up. Nighttime again. Lamp out. One thin blanket in the entire house, and it went to Lu Lan and Xiao Ling because I'm not about to let a 4-year-old freeze. That left me and Xiaomei with nothing but body heat and stubbornness, and only one of us had enough body mass to generate warmth worth sharing. I reached over and hauled her in. She fought. She always fights. Pushing against my chest with those noodle arms, whispering threats, invoking her sister-in-law's presence like Lu Lan was some kind of anti-scumbag force field. Spoiler, she wasn't. Lu Lan had been asleep every night since day one with the same convincing performance as a rock pretending to be unconscious. I'm cold. Shut up and let me hold you. My sister-in-law is right there. She sleeps like a dead pig. Relax. Xiaomei tried every exit strategy in the playbook. Begging, claiming she was still sore, calling me an animal. I absorbed each complaint like a sponge absorbs water, completely, effortlessly, and without changing shape. You're a beast. Correct. A beast who brought home 3 sand grouse today. The beast is the reason you're not a skeleton right now. The beast charges rent. Deal with it. She ran out of words. Eventually, she ran out of fight too. Her muscles surrendered one by one, like candles going out in a breeze, and she settled into me the way she always did, furious on the surface, warm underneath, pretending she hated every second while her fingers gripped my shirt like letting go meant falling off a cliff. On the other end of the bed, Lu Lan was performing her nightly masterpiece. The widow who is definitely sleeping and hears absolutely nothing. 3 nights running. Same production, same terrible acting. Her hands were squeezing the blanket, so hard I'm surprised the fabric didn't scream. Her breathing was about as natural as a fish riding a bicycle. She heard everything. Every word, every rustle, every sharp little inhale from Xiaomei. And her brain was doing what it had been doing for 3 nights straight, running unauthorized simulations involving herself in Xiaomei's position. She kept trying to stop, kept biting her tongue, scolding herself internally, reminding herself that I was Xiaomei's man, and she had no business thinking what she was thinking. But the thoughts came anyway, like uninvited guests who brought luggage. My declaration from yesterday, Lulan is mine, had burrowed into her skull and built a permanent residence. Every time she replayed it, her face heated up another degree. By now she could probably fry eggs on her cheeks without a pan. The poor woman was fighting a two-front war, the cold outside the blanket and the heat inside her own head. She was jealous. She'd never admit it, not even to herself, but the math was obvious. Xiaomei complained every night, cursed my name, called me every animal in the zoo. But Xiaomei had someone who held her when it was cold, someone who stood between her and danger, someone whose chest she buried her face in every morning when she woke up, whether she admitted it or not. Lulan had a 4-year-old and a pillow. The comparison wasn't exactly flattering. Before me, Li Jizai would creep around her house like a hungry rat, trying to buy her dignity with scraps of food. She could only hide, could only pretend not to be home, could only pray he'd get bored and leave. No one defended her. No one cared. Now, one word from me, and Jizai was eating snow in my yard. One declaration, and every man in the village knew the price of touching what was mine. For the first time in 3 years, Lulan felt safe. And safety, it turns out, is extremely attractive when you haven't tasted it since your husband died. Her mental defenses were collapsing like a sandcastle at high tide. She'd started the week wanting to kill me. By midweek, she was cooking for me and blushing when I looked at her. Now she was lying awake at night wondering what it would feel like to trade places with her own sister-in-law. The trajectory was clear. The destination was inevitable. The only question was how long she'd keep pretending the train wasn't moving. Morning came. I extracted myself from Xiaomei's octopus grip. The woman slept like she was trying to merge with my ribcage, and sat up quietly. Lulan popped up immediately. Not woke up, she was already awake. Had been awake. Possibly had never been asleep at any point during the night. She looked at me with dark circles under her eyes deep enough to store grain in. Up early, Fengzi? I gave her a look. Rough night. Her face ignited. Instant tomato. And no. Xiaoling kept kicking the blanket off. I had to check on her a few times. Sure. Xiaoling. The blanket. That's why you look like you haven't slept since the Ming Dynasty. Definitely the blanket. I smiled but said nothing. She knew I knew. I knew she knew I knew. We both chose to leave it alone, suspended in the most awkward unspoken agreement in the history of shared sleeping arrangements. She scrambled off the bed and into her shoes. I'll boil some water for you. She practically sprinted to the kitchen like the floor was on fire. I watched her go. Noticed what I noticed. Kept my observations to myself like a gentleman. A very ungentlemanly gentleman, but still, for days in this house. 3 women orbiting me like confused planets around a sun that didn't ask for a solar system. One was slowly surrendering. One was quietly volunteering. One was too young to understand any of it, but had already picked her side based on who provided the most chicken butts. I grabbed my bow, pocketed my slingshot, and headed for the door. The mountain was waiting. The birds were waiting. Another day of survival, another haul of meat, another step forward in this insane frozen soap opera I'd accidentally become the lead character of. Behind me, Lulan was boiling water with shaking hands, cheeks still burning, brain still replaying a sentence I'd said to someone else in a yard full of snow. Some traps you build with sticks and string. Some traps build themselves, and all you have to do is exist loudly enough for people to walk into them on their own. Morning routine was becoming almost civilized. Lulan handed me hot water before I even asked, passed me a corn cake without being told, and when I mentioned heading south to set snares, she walked to the corner, grabbed the ratty dog fur hat, and held it out like she'd been waiting for the cue. Snow's deep out there. Watch for hidden holes. Come home early. I'll hold things down here. Come home early. Hold things down. This woman was 2 days away from packing me a lunchbox and kissing me goodbye at the gate. She was already standing in the doorway watching me walk away with that look. The one wives give husbands heading off to work. I'll worry about you until you're back, look. Except we weren't married. I hadn't proposed. She'd just promoted herself, filled the position without an interview. And honestly, her resume was solid. Cooking, cleaning, child management, emotional labor for her sister-in-law, plus she never complained. Employee of the month, every month. The South Woods were perfect hunting ground. Thick brush, sheltered from wind, dead grass buried under the snow. Every rabbit and sand grouse in the region treated this place like an all-you-can-eat buffet. I found fresh tracks within minutes. 2 round prints up front, 2 long ones behind. Classic rabbit signature. These dumb animals have one devastating weakness. They're creatures of habit. Once a rabbit makes a path through the snow, it uses that same path over and over like it's paying rent on it. I followed the prints until I found exactly what I needed. A narrow gap between 2 fat willow roots, barely a palm's width across. Bushes on both sides, no room to go around. Every track led straight through this bottleneck. The rabbit highway had a toll booth, and I was about to install one. I pulled iron wire from my belt and bent it into a slip loop. One small circle threaded through itself to create a noose that tightened when pulled. The trick was the height, for fingers off the ground. Too high, the rabbit ducks under. Too low, it hops over. For fingers puts the loop right at neck level. Rabbit comes running. Head goes through, feels the wire, panics, bolts forward, and the noose cinches tight. Self-service execution. I don't even need to be present. Just come back tomorrow and collect my order. 5 perfect choke points, 5 wire snares. Used every piece of iron I had. If even 2 of these caught something overnight, that was a couple pounds of real meat, not bird scraps, but thick rabbit flesh with actual fat content. The kind of food that keeps you alive through January. With the trap set, I took a different route back to squeeze some bonus hunting in. Couldn't go home empty-handed. The pantry situation at Casa Chinfong was tighter than Lulan's grip on the blanket at night. 1 leftover sand grouse wasn't feeding 4 mouths. I needed supplements. The slingshot came out. 3 sparrows and a sand grouse later, I was heading downhill feeling like the CEO of Wilderness Catering. Today's portfolio, 5 snare traps invested for future returns, plus immediate dividends of 4 birds for tonight's dinner. Not bad for a morning's work. Then I spotted something at the bottom of the mountain that wasn't on my schedule. Footprints in the snow. Human ones. But wrong. Stumbling. Uneven. Zigzagging like whoever made them was either blackout drunk or barely conscious. The tracks led to a suspicious snow mound about 15 steps ahead. This stretch of ground was normally flat. Snow mounds don't just appear. I walked closer and noticed a strip of black cotton trouser leg poking out from under the white. Kicked the snow off. A person, face down, buried, completely motionless. I grabbed the back of his collar and flipped him over. A blue-gray face stared up at the sky with closed eyes. Joe Hung, 18 years old. Village kid, quiet, hard-working, stubborn as a mule who'd been raised by other mules. The kind of guy who'd argue with a wall and expect the wall to apologize. I checked his breathing. Faint. The kind of faint where the gap between alive and not alive was measured in minutes, not hours. Classic combination. Starving body plus freezing night plus no shelter equals human popsicle. He'd probably been out here since last night, looking for food or firewood, collapsed, and the snow covered him like a white funeral blanket. I stood up and looked at him. Then I looked at the village in the distance. Then I looked back at him. Here's the math. I had 3 women and a child at home already consuming every calorie I hunted. My food supply was a joke, 1 meal ahead of starvation at any given moment. Adding another mouth was like drilling a hole in a sinking boat because you felt bad for the water outside. On the other hand, this was a healthy 18-year-old male. If he survived, he could work. He could chop wood, haul water, carry game, set traps. An extra pair of hands on the mountain could double my output. 3 women cooking and managing the house. 1 young guy helping me hunt. That wasn't charity. That was a business investment. On the other hand, if he survived, was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. He might eat my food for 3 days and die anyway. Net loss. I looked at him one more time. Blue lips. Shallow breath. Snow melting on his frozen eyelashes. I turned around and started walking toward the village. Every man for himself. That's the rule. I didn't make the famine. I didn't make the winter. I didn't make this kid wander into the mountains with no plan and no supplies. I had my people. He wasn't my people. My boots crunched through the snow, one step after another, putting distance between me and a dying stranger. The wind blew. The village chimneys leaked thin smoke into the gray sky. Somewhere in my house, Lulan was probably standing at the door again, watching for me, ready with hot water and a worried smile. I kept walking. I made it about 15 steps before my brain ruined everything. My legs were walking away, but my head was doing math. 3 women at home. Great for cooking, great for warming beds, absolutely useless for anything requiring physical labor, intelligence gathering, or not crying. I needed a guy. Someone to run errands, spy on neighbors, do the grunt work I couldn't waste hunting time on. Zhou Heng was 18, built tough, had zero family, and was currently dying in a snowbank. An orphan with no connections meant no complications. And this kid was famous for being stupidly loyal, the kind of idiot who, once he decided you were his person, would chew through a brick wall if you asked him to. I walked back, crouched down, pulled a raw frozen sparrow from my pocket and jammed it into his unconscious mouth like I was feeding a baby bird in reverse. Had to pry his jaw open. Starvation had locked it shut. The raw meat hit his tongue, survival instinct kicked in, and his throat did the rest. He swallowed that frozen sparrow whole without chewing. His body convulsed. He coughed like a dying engine turning over, and slowly, painfully, his eyes cracked open. Chinfong, wanna live? I asked. No small talk. No sympathy speech. Just the question. Yes. No hesitation either. Good answer. I handed him 2 more sparrows. Then work for me. This kid dropped to his knees in the snow so fast, I thought his legs broke. Forehead straight into the ground. Brother Fong, my life is yours from today forward. 3 sparrows. That's what it cost me to buy a loyal soldier. 3 tiny birds that weighed less than my slingshot. Best investment I'd ever made. I hauled him up and gave him his first assignment. Become my spy network. Map every household in the village. Who has food? Who's faking poverty? Who's hiding supplies? He scratched his head. How? I can't just knock on doors asking if people have cornflour. They'd beat me with a stick. I kicked him in the butt. Lightly. Educationally. Use your eyes, genius. Then I taught him the Chinfong School of Village Intelligence. Lesson 1. Chimneys. Everyone's eating once a day, maybe once every 2 days to save food. If someone's chimney smokes twice or 3 times daily, they've got stash. They're cooking secret meals. Lesson 2. Children. Kids can't keep secrets. If a child's face looks healthy or has crumbs around their mouth, that family is eating better than they're admitting. Lesson 3. And this is where his jaw really dropped. Toilets. Check what people dump from their chamber pots. Yellow means cornflour diet. Black means they're eating tree bark and cottonseed shells. And if a family hasn't produced any output in days, they're eating clay, which means they're about to be dead. Zhou Heng looked at me like I'd just revealed the meaning of existence through poop analysis. Brother Fong, how does your brain even work? Finally, nighttime operations. Crouch against the walls of the wealthier houses after dark. Listen, who's secretly chewing food at midnight? Which couples are fighting over hidden rations? Every whisper, every crunch, every argument, report it all. He was nodding so hard his neck might have snapped. I'll map every family's underwear drawer if you need me to, Brother Fong. Consider it done. 3 sparrows. 1 dying orphan. And just like that, I had eyes and ears across the entire village. A complete intelligence network powered by gratitude and raw frozen bird meat. Second thing, I said, and his ears went straight up like a dog hearing a can opener. Second assignment was the big one. I dropped my voice low, and Zhou Heng automatically stopped breathing, like his lungs knew this was classified information. Find me the hunting rifle. His eyes bugged out. Brother Fong, didn't Brigade Leader Zhao say he turned it in to the commune? And I say Zhao Fuliang is a fox wearing a human suit. Think about it. Blizzard season, wolves coming down the mountain, wild boar herds crashing through villages. You think that old fox surrendered the only gun that could stop a 200-pound pig from eating his grandchildren? The rifle is somewhere in this village. Maybe in Zhao's house, maybe with one of the old hunters, maybe with a militia guy. Find it. I told him to shadow Zhao Yuhua, the brigade leader's idiot son, the same genius I'd recently planted face first into a snowdrift. That kid couldn't keep a secret if his mouth was sewn shut. If Daddy had a gun hidden at home, Junior would eventually brag about it. Zhou Heng just needed to hover nearby and collect the breadcrumbs. For the old hunters on the east side, simpler technique. Walk past their yards and sniff for gunpowder. Check their walls for powder gourds. These guys were creatures of habit. You can't hide a lifestyle. One rule. I told him. You are invisible. You're a starving orphan nobody. People yell at you? Take it. People hit you? Take it. Don't fight back. Don't talk back. Don't exist louder than a shadow. Just bring me information. He snapped to attention like a soldier who'd found his general. 3 sparrows. That's what my entire intelligence network cost. 3 frozen birds and 1 rescued life. Cheaper than a newspaper subscription and infinitely more useful. The kid disappeared into the snow with purpose in his step and 2 raw sparrows in his coat, and I headed home feeling like a chess player who'd just placed a very important piece on the board. The rifle was the real prize. My bow handled pheasants, my slingshot handled sparrows, but if I ever ran into a wolf pack or a wild boar on that mountain, I'd be bringing a stick to a tank fight. A gun changes everything: range, power, fear factor. The man with the gun writes the rules. Everyone else reads them. Next morning, 6:30. Same routine. Wake up, extract myself from Shuame's unconscious koala grip, step into shoes, walk outside. Lulan was already up, fire going, hot water ready. She'd become so efficient at this morning ritual that I was starting to suspect she had an internal alarm clock calibrated to 10 minutes before Chinfong wakes up. Be careful, it's slippery. She said it to my back as I walked out, and I pretended I didn't hear the exact same worried wife energy she'd been radiating all week. Today was payday. Yesterday's snare traps had been sitting overnight, and I was heading south to collect. An hour of frozen hiking later, I reached the brush line and started checking. Trap 1 empty. Wire hanging perfectly, not a single track nearby. The rabbit had taken a personal day. Trap 2 empty. Trap 3 empty. My eyebrow twitched. 3 blanks in a row. Maybe these rabbits had a group chat warning each other about the new management. Trap 4 was set between 2 fat willow roots, the best choke point I'd found yesterday. I rounded a snow mound, peeked through some dead branches, and saw something thrashing violently in the gap. Jackpot. Trap 5 had cargo too. Both wires had done their job perfectly. 2 rabbits, next caught, struggling against physics and losing badly. I jogged over, put them out of their misery with 2 quick snaps, and held them up to admire my work. 5, maybe 6 pounds of rabbit between them. In 1960 winter economics, I was holding the equivalent of a small fortune. This was real meat, thick, dense, with actual fat content. Not sparrow bones and wishful thinking. This was the stuff that keeps humans alive through January. I bled them immediately. Fresh kill goes bad fast if you skip this step. Knife across the throat, dark blood painting the white snow red. Then the whole butcher routine. Skin peeled off in one piece because fur has trade value. Belly slit open. Organs removed and saved because in this economy, even intestines are a luxury item. Wash everything with clean snow. Stuff it all in a sack. Start walking home. Grab firewood on the way because that's just automatic now. Even 2 sticks matter. The difference between freezing tonight and not freezing tonight might literally be 2 sticks. Never go downhill empty-handed. That's rule number 1 of mountain survival, and I follow it like religion. Near the village entrance, I spotted a figure bent over in the snow, poking around with a long stick. Auntie Jo, 42 years old. The village's most powerful broadcasting system. This woman's mouth operated at a frequency and range that made actual radio equipment jealous. Any piece of information that entered her ears exited her mouth within hours, amplified, dramatized, and delivered to every doorstep in the settlement free of charge. She saw me. I saw her seeing me. And I saw the exact moment her eyes locked onto the bulging sack on my shoulder. The sack that was very obviously heavy, very obviously full, and very obviously not containing firewood. 2 key assets acquired in 2 days. Yesterday, Zhou Heng, my silent spy. Today, Auntie Jo, the village megaphone. One gathered secrets. The other destroyed them. Both were now standing in my orbit. The spy network was for knowing things quietly. But Auntie Jo, she was for making things known loudly. Every leader needs both. Whispers coming in and thunder going out. Information is food for the brain, and I was about to become the best-fed mind in the entire village. I shifted the sack of rabbit on my shoulder and walked toward her with a plan already forming behind my smile.